All right, we're going to get started. All right, is everyone ready? Excellent. Start off with the gavel. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Planning Commission on Tuesday, November 29th, 2022. This meeting is called to order. I'll request staff to call the roll for the commissioners who are present and who are not.
Commissioner Harris is absent. Commissioner Haveman.
Here.
Commissioner Mercado.
Here.
Commissioner Samudzi.
Here.
Commissioner Schock.
Here.
Vice Chair Saudi.
Here.
And Chair Prevatali.
Here, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the order of the agenda. Are there any changes to the order of the agenda? The order may only be changed by a majority vote of the commissioners present. Okay, I see no changes. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the meeting procedures. I'd like to ask staff to address how public comment will work this evening. Please note that due to the number of folks in attendance, we will limit public comment to 2 minutes. Leslie?
Yes. In response to Assembly Bill 361, the City of San Rafael is offering teleconference without complying with the procedural requirements of Government Code Section 54953B3. This meeting is being recorded and being held in person, virtually using Zoom, and is being streamed live to YouTube at www.youtube.com/City of San Rafael. YouTube viewers are welcome to attend by telephone by calling 669-444-9171 and entering the meeting ID. Meeting ID is 883-238-1452 #. Or you can watch directly through Zoom using the link on the agenda. When the chair opens the public comment, we will first take public comment from those in attendance in the chambers, followed by those in virtual attendance. If you are coming up to the dais to speak, please lower or raise the microphone accordingly so that we can ensure that we transmit your comments virtually. If you are participating by telephone tonight and wish to provide comments, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period. This will raise your virtual hand. And once you hear a notification that the host is inviting you to speak, please press *6 to unmute yourself. You will have 2 minutes. If you submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the Planning Commission. Closed captioning is available for this meeting using the icon at the bottom of the Zoom webinar screen or through the link on YouTube. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let me now describe how the meeting procedures will work. We will begin with a staff report. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. As I mentioned, because we have so many people, we are limiting each speaker to 2 minutes. Commissioners will then have the opportunity to ask questions of staff, applicant, or the public after each segment. We will then close the public hearing and bring the matter back to the commission for discussion and action if necessary. Now time for urgent communications. Anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda may address the commission at this time.
So if you wish to speak on an item not Northgate, please come up to the dais to speak and you will have 2 minutes.
John Gaskin. And the main thing that I want to do is to object to the city staff's proposal to limit the discussion to their few selected topics for the Northgate Mall development. This is billed as a working session and few residents have been aware of the developer's proposal, as evinced by consistently low participation in providing feedback to city staff, primarily from those with a vested interest in the building industry, such as housing advocates, architects, etc. Now, I'd like to talk about the housing element. The Northgate Mall proposal is integral to the San Rafael proposed housing element update, which gives no consideration to adjacent unincorporated proposals in North San Rafael. Lack of coordination with the county housing element update is incredible. They state they plan between 1180 and 3,500 units on the east side of the freeway within the North San Rafael corridor. Traffic. Although staff stated no traffic impact from increased development, that is not borne out by overflow onto Terra Linda side streets as the freeway backs up from multiple on-ramps from Novato through Terra Linda. The housing element is based on current population, which includes past provision of rental apartments along Nova Albion, Los Ranchitos, et cetera, but those rental apartments are given no credit as new targets are meted out. Lack of credit for past accommodation is leading to overbuilding in North San Rafael. The more you build, the more you have to build. Put another way, we don't care about you as a resident once you become a resident. Water, there's insufficient water to continue.
Thank you,
to-
Mr. Gaskin.
Thank you. We got you. We understand your concerns. Thank you. Appreciate. Thank you for speaking.
Virginia Gaskin. And I also want to speak on the housing, draft housing element. I had much more planned to speak, and I am just so offended that at the last moment you would decline to let us speak. You are mandated to listen to the public. That's part of this housing draft. There's an appendix that's missing now that's on public participation. And I think you should start by saying we never let anybody talk more than 2 minutes. Now, it appears that we have the highest allocation of 3,220 units. We are one of 2 Marin cities that did not appeal its numbers. And apparently we are embracing them and we are planning to exceed them. The housing site lists say that the HCD requires a buffer for lower income units, and that's a reasonable thing to do. That means that on the housing site list, you must include more names than you are required to do so. So our buffer for lower income is 24% above what we are required to provide. For moderate income, it is 43% above what we are required to provide. Above moderate, it is 74% above what we are required to provide. The recently adopted San Rafael General Plan enables more than 4,400 new housing units. Is it the city's intention to build these numbers? Chapter 6 is the Housing Action Plan. In the housing plan embedded, it says that the owner of Northgate 3 site does not want to
Thank you,
develop
Mrs.
right
Gaskin.
now. He wants to focus on Northgate first.
Mhm.
I am questioning for you, does the Merlin Geyer Group own Northgate 3?
I believe so.
And yes, I
Yep.
think so too,
Yep.
because they put up the
Thank you.
really lovely Habit Burger.
Yes, I've been there. Thank you. Thank
no,
you so much for
I'm
your,
sorry, I'm
I
not
think we
done.
understand.
I'm 78 years old.
I understand.
This is going.
Yeah. Okay. Let's,
Thank you.
Okay.
I probably could go around.
mhm. It would also be useful to put it in writing. So we, at some
I
point.
have been reading
Mhm.
the doggone document and the code.
Mhm.
There is
If you
no
start the
doubt.
clock at for 2 minutes for the next person, the
Like,
clock.
San
2
Rafael
minutes.
intends to be recognized as a pro-housing city. San Rafael intends to use the housing site list as a marketing tool to proactively attract housing by contacting. San Rafael intends to amend development standards and parking requirements to accommodate higher densities. The city council in March of 2021 reduced inclusionary housing requirements from 20% to 10% so that new developments would be streamlined and would be enabled to ignore height, density, and green space requirements. The state's affirmatively furthering fair housing mandates also means that housing opportunities should be geographically distributed so that no single neighborhood is overly impacted. You have approved already in spreadsheet A planned units of 373, which means that 58% of them are in Terra Linda. You have active proposals in spreadsheet B. If you include the phase one for
Okay.
the Northgate project, you have 81% of them in
Yeah.
Terra Linda.
Yeah.
If you include phase two, you have 88% in Terra Linda. And it's not like we are
Yeah.
asking for
Gonna
no
give you-
housing.
10 more seconds, ma'am.
Okay, we say integrate all the low-income housing, spread it around the city. Do not denigrate people by putting it in just one spot. You already have created the canal area. And
Yes.
a planning commission did that, and a city council did that, and now they're in a
Okay,
world of
thank you.
hurt.
Understood. We understand. Thank you. Thank you very much for your
You are the
thoughtful.
custodians of the city.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. Yeah. I just want to pause and say that that the housing element, there's still an opportunity to comment on the housing element. And so please do please do submit your comments in writing to the housing element. You can find the contact information on the city's website. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any urgent items that are not on the agenda? And please do limit those to items that are indeed urgent.
So, yes.
Yeah. Please come up to the podium for 2 minutes.
I own several houses in Terra Linda.
Do you want to add something to the agenda? Or?
I don't know how it works. I'm curious, how are you dealing with water in
Oh,
Marin County?
we're
Where
going
is
to
that?
have a public comment session later.
Okay,
So this is just for items, emergency, like urgent items that should be added to the agenda
okay.
or
I'll come back up for
communications.
that.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
So for clarification, this is if you have comment for anything that is not on the agenda, it will not be heard and we will not be responding because it hasn't been properly noticed or agendized. So
Yeah.
if anyone else has any comments on something not on the agenda, please step up. And if you're attending virtually and would like to speak on something not on the agenda, please raise your hand. And there is one commenter. Mark, you have 2 minutes and I will keep you to 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm wondering if within this discussion, I don't see it on the agenda. If you are taking into consideration the illegitimacy of the regional housing needs assessment as displayed by the Auditor General of California. And if you're still using that assessment, which used the 2010 census in doing any of the planning needs that you're doing. I know you're not supposed to comment on this, but I think that this is a very important item that needs to be looked at. In addition, the Auditor General indicated that SB 868 was problematic in terms of the fact that it contained a lot of misstatements as well. I don't see the clock, by the way. You know, this is another example of where centralized planning has historically always failed, always failed. And if we're going to let Sacramento dictate what's going to happen throughout all of the programs that are being initiated in Marin, we're going to have difficulties. But if we're using a regional plan that the Auditor General has indicated might have hundreds of thousands of missed plans in it, how can we possibly plan for Marin County?
Thank you for your comment. Excellent. All right. Let's move on. Do you see anyone else with any requests for comment, Leslie?
No, that is it.
Okay, great. Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent calendar, which has one item, approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes of November 15, 2022. The recommended action is to approve the minutes. Are there any comments from the public on the consent calendar?
If you wish to comment on the minutes from our last meeting, please come up to the dais. And or if you're participating virtually, please use the raise the hand icon at the bottom of the screen or *9 if you are phoning in. There are no comments from the
Okay.
public.
Do we have any comments from anyone on the Planning Commission? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh,
I'll motion to approve the minutes from November 15th.
I'll second the motion. Commissioner Haveman.
Commissioner Saudi gave the motion.
Okay, great. If there's no discussion, I will move to take a roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Harris is absent. Commissioner Haveman,
Yes.
Commissioner Mercado,
Yes.
Commissioner Samudzi,
Yes.
Commissioner Schock,
Yes.
Vice Chair Saudi,
Yes.
and Chair Pravatali.
Yes. Great. Okay, now we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. This is the study session of the Northgate Town Square project. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission conduct a study session, receive public comment, and provide feedback on the revised project. May we have the staff presentation, please?
Yes, good evening, Chair. Tonight, I'd like to introduce to you Diane Glutinsky. She is a consultant with the city and has been assisting the city with preparation for tonight's hearing. And I also want to mention that Diane has been working with us, but she's about to retire. So she's going to be here through the end of December. And as we transition, we have Heather Hines, who is a consultant as well, who will be transitioning in and managing the project from moving forward. So with that, I'll go ahead and allow Diane to begin the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, members of the commission. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. The purpose of tonight's study session, and it is a study session, you're not taking any action this evening, is to follow up on issues that were raised a year ago in September of 2021 when the Planning Commission last saw the Northgate redevelopment project. And that was at a time when you had a joint study session with the Design Review Board. Several points of direction were raised by the commission as well as members of the public, and the applicant then worked on revised plans to address these concerns. We've narrowed tonight's focus to 4 items because we want to get good input from everyone. There will be many more sessions to discuss other areas besides what we're talking about tonight. And we know there's people very interested in talking about things like water and traffic and noise. There's many very important issues surrounding this project, but tonight we're limiting it to 4 areas, and we will have future meetings that address those. We are in the process of doing an environmental impact report, which involves technical studies that will address things like traffic and air quality and noise and many other things. And those will all be made available to the public and to the commission. Staff will evaluate the project and bring it forward, and we will discuss all areas. So tonight we're limiting it to 4 areas that you raised in September of 2021. The first is the size and location of the town square. The second issue we're looking at is the mix of housing types. The third issue, and I'll go through all these in detail in a moment. The third issue is the location and phasing of the affordable units. And finally, we want to talk about bicycle and pedestrian access to and through the site. So as a little background, the Northgate Mall was actually originally constructed in the 1960s. I can tell you as a Marin native that it was my reward to get our chores done on Saturday so we could go hang out at the open air mall. I'm old and it was an open air mall originally with any of you that might remember, it had a big fountain in the middle of it, quite the gathering place. Over the years, there have been, particularly in the 80s and 90s, the mall has been remodeled. At one point, a large amount of the space was converted to the cinemas that you see there now. There were other additions to the mall. And today there's approximately 761,000 square feet of retail space at the mall. So Merlone Geyer, the project applicant, they purchased the site in 2017 and came forward with a plan to redevelop the mall in June of 2021. It was shortly after that, in September of 2021, that the Planning Commission met with the Design Review Board to review those plans and gave direction to the applicant. They took that direction and prepared revised plans to address the concerns raised that evening and presented revised plans to the city in March of 2022. Those are essentially the plans that are before you this evening. Again, there's a long way to go on this project. We're taking it pieces at a time because it's very important. This is probably the biggest project San Rafael has ever seen. And we want to make sure it's a great opportunity to have a great development, and we want to make sure we do that. As I mentioned previously, there is an environmental impact report currently being prepared. We anticipate that we'll have a draft available to the public and the Planning Commission early 2023, and we'll keep you advised on that, but the technical studies are currently underway. We are very anxiously awaiting that information so we can further evaluate the project. So the existing mall, as I said, is about 761,000 square feet. What Merlone Geyer is proposing is to demolish a large portion of that mall and create a project that would result in about 225,000 square feet of retail space and sorry, losing my train of thought, and about 1,320 residential units. So to do that, they obviously have to demolish large portions of the mall. They are planning a two-phase project, as you noticed in your staff report. There's a timeline that kind of addresses phase one as 2025 and phase two is 2040. So on the demolition plan that you see in front of you, these buildings that are kind of light pink, those would all, it's the old Sears, now Restoration Hardware, RH, the outlying buildings to Sears, the Home Goods, and then the area, the bulk of the mall that lies south of Macy's and north of the Cineplex, those would largely be demolished as part of phase one. And the theaters, as you can see, are being retained. In phase two, Macy's and Kohl's would be removed. It's important to know Macy's and Kohl's both have long-term contracts, so that's part of the reason that they will be part of the phase two of the development. So this is the plan that we are currently looking at. And I'm going to point out some things in this plan and I'll go through them in detail in just a moment. But if you look on the map, sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing where my cursor is. The area marked A is the town square. The town square is a public gathering place. It's an opportunity for outdoor recreation, potentially a dog park, children's play area, gathering place for to put on shows and things like that. In last September, that town square was 35,000 square feet in size, and it was going to be a part of phase 2 of the project. The commission expressed concern that they thought it was too small, and they also wanted to see it as part of phase 1 of the project. Merlone Geyer took that under consideration. They've come back with a revised plan that is now 50,000 square feet. So they've added 15,000 square feet to that town square area. They've also proposed to add, there was concern expressed by people with the parking to the west of the town square, which is this area here, that they believed that that should be actually part of town square. Merlone Geyer has indicated that they believe that parking is necessary for retail uses, and I'll allow the applicant will go into greater detail on that. They have come up with a plan to put removable bollards that could be moved to then allow that area to be used as an expansion of town square on occasion for various events. So that is the town square. The areas marked B1, you can see them. This is parcel 2 is B1, parcel 3 B1, and parcel 4 B1. Those all have residential units on them. This parcel 2, when you looked at it last September, had actually 304 apartment units on it. The entire development, when you looked at it last September, was all rental housing. And the commission expressed concern about that and wanted to see a mix of housing, some ownership and rental. In response to that, Merlone Geyer has created a parcel, this parcel with 85 units of townhouse for sale, townhouse homes. In order to do that and keep the same number of units on the site, they needed to relocate the difference, the 124 units, which have been allocated to parcels 3 and 4. Parcel 3 would, be 280 units, and parcel 4 would be 446 units. Those would be apartments. Parcel C, which is right up here, is an approximately 2-acre parcel. It's 1.91 acres. It's a parcel that would be split off and given to EAH, Ecumenical Association for Housing, to develop and manage 96 low-income rental units. In doing it, in putting all the rental units on one site, the affordable rental units, it allows EAH, in giving the parcel to EAH, it allows them, because they are affordable housing developers, they can get financing that would not be available to just a typical market rate developer. They are in the business of doing this kind of housing. It's not unusual in a project this size to see a piece carved out and given to affordable housing developer to actually construct that housing. In order to do so, Merlone Geyer will stub in all the utilities to the site, so it's ready to go. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in my presentation. Area D here is a bike area that's about 9,000 square feet adjacent to the park, to town square. It would have a bike maintenance facility. There's a lot of bike racks and bike storage areas throughout the site. Some open air places for people to bike there and then sit and have coffee or enjoy something to eat. Excuse me. E on the site plan is where in September, you expressed concern about access, pedestrian and, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Pedestrian and bicycle access to the, to and within the site. And Merlone Geyer has ended up putting a major access way in here to the town square. F is the city's satellite library. It will also include a community room that'll be available for the community to use. So this is essentially the highlights of the 2025 Phase 1 plan. This is the 2040 Phase 2 plan. Essentially, there are, as you can see, at that point, Macy's and Kohl's are both removed, and there's a lot of other retail that gets built. You can see these pads here, but most importantly, in the 2040 plan are 2 more parcels for housing. This is parcel 5 here. That's 266 units of apartments. And then up on parcel 6 up here, 147 units of housing, also apartments. So those essentially are the 2 phases in general terms of the plan. So our first discussion item tonight is Town Square. And as I mentioned previously, when you saw this last September, Town Square was 35,000 square feet. It was a part of Phase 2 of the development. There seemed to be very strong feeling that Town Square was the opportunity to do something very exciting on this project. It should be larger and should be part of Phase 1. The applicants have done that, as I mentioned, and the applicant will go into greater detail just exactly what they're proposing in this Town Square area, but it would allow for public gathering places, potentially a dog park, children's play area. And what we're looking for from the commission this evening is to hear if the 50,000 square foot solution addresses your concerns previously expressed that it needed to be larger. And if the potential use of removable bollards to expand into the parking area to the west of the Town Square, if you support that. So that's essentially what we're looking for on discussion item 1. Discussion item 2 relates to the mix of unit types. The applicant is requesting 1,320 units with the potential of adding another 102 units, so a maximum of 1,422 units. The general plan would allow 1,900 units on this site, so they're well within the allowable density. The general plan, or the EIR, will actually look at the 1,422 units, so we're assuming a worst case, largest number, greatest traffic impact or air quality as part of those technical studies, just so you're aware of that. So they are, the commission had expressed a desire to not have all rental housing on this site, which is what you saw last September. As I mentioned earlier, they took parcel 2 at the south end of the site and removed the 304 rental apartments from that area, and instead are proposing 85 for sale townhomes. Those townhomes would be 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms in size. On parcel 1, again, there is the affordable rental apartment units. Those would be studio 1, 2, 3 bedroom units. And again, built and operated by Ecumenical Association for Housing. One of the benefits of this, in addition to the financing that I mentioned earlier that they're eligible to go after, they also, they manage many affordable housing projects and provide social services as part of that management. So, you know, things like job counseling and all kinds of, they deal with daycare issues and things like that that would be of service to the residents in that affordable housing project. Then on the other parcels are all market rate apartments. So that's parcels 3, 4, 5, and 6. And as I mentioned, parcel 3 would be 280 units, parcel 4, 446 units. Parcel 5 would be 266, and parcel 6, 174. So in phase 2, parcels 5 and 6, they're actually proposing, they have to provide 42 affordable units as part of that phase. They're proposing to disperse those throughout the apartment buildings on parcels 5 and 6. So That would be consistent with the city's affordable housing guidelines that say they should be dispersed. I'd like to mention the city's ordinance does say that they can be concentrated if that and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially if it allows, financing or more opportunity to provide affordable housing, which in this case, having EAH do the 96 units certainly opens the door for a much deeper level of affordable housing on that site. And then there'd be 42 units dispersed between parcels 5 and 6. That would be studio 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So the question here is, does this mix of housing types and also affordability levels meet the direction that the Planning Commission previously provided? And specifically, does it meet the intent of general plan policy, land use policy 3.3? And I'll read that to you. 3.3 says, encourage a diverse mix of housing choices in terms of affordability, unit type, and size, including opportunities for both renters and owners. Staff believes that, they definitely have taken that direction to heart. They do now have for sale and rental options, various sizes of units within those. Discussion item 3 is the number and location of affordable housing. As I mentioned previously, the parcel 1 will have 96 units of apartments that EAH will build and make available for lower income. They will be rental units. They'll vary in size, studio 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. That's in phase 1. So that will be built as part of the initial phase. Phase 2 will have 42 units of affordable housing dispersed throughout those 2 apartment developments on parcel 5 and 6. Those will be studio 1 and 2 bedroom units. So the same as what they're proposing as market rate within those parcels. Having the ability to cluster units allows greater opportunities to provide the affordable housing on the site, which is consistent with the city's goals regarding affordable housing. We're looking for feedback, wanting to know if you believe that the developers have in fact met your direction, if they've adequately addressed the number and location of affordable housing. There were planning commissioners last time who indicated they thought the carved out parcel for a nonprofit developer was a good idea, but they also believe there should be other units dispersed on site. And in fact, that's what they've come back with. And finally, our final discussion item tonight is bicycle and pedestrian access to and through the site connections. As you know, we have the North San Rafael Promenade, which will ultimately connect the Terra Linda Recreation Center to the park at the Civic Center, and also provide access to the SMART station. A portion of this already exists on Northgate, or on, I keep doing that, I'm sorry, on Northgate Drive. I'm sorry, on Las Colinas. This right here is currently a class 1, what's referred to as a class 1 bike route. A class 1 bike route has separated pedestrian and bike. This one is multimodal, so it provides for pedestrian and bicycles that are physically separated from the vehicular traffic adjacent to it. That's a class 1. And this exists now. The applicants are proposing, in their previous submittal to you last September, there was very little information about connections on site, both for pedestrians and bicycles. They are proposing to bring that class 1 route into the town square, which we believe makes perfect sense. There's also, currently there exists on Northgate Drive class 2. These are bike lanes that are striped, but don't have a physical barrier between the traffic and the bikes. So those currently are on Northgate And the applicant is proposing to create a number of class 2 bike routes throughout the project site, primarily in the residential areas. Finally, there's a class 3 bike route, which is just a signed bike. It's not, there's no lines or pavement markings. It's just signed, and there are a number of those within the site. They've also added or shown where they have now a number of sidewalks throughout the site. Generally speaking, the sidewalks in the town square area are 6 feet in width. The sidewalks in the residential areas 5 feet in width. There have been questions raised whether what they've done is enough. Several people have raised concerns that there should be connections here to the west from on-site to connect to these class 2 routes on Northgate, and also to the north to connect back out to the class 1 and the promenade. So that's a question for the commission this evening is, have they done enough, or should there be additional connections within the site? That concludes my part of the presentation for now. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to introduce to you David Geiser, who is with Merlone Geyer. He is going to go into more detail regarding the applicant's presentation, and then he'll return it to me and I'll summarize, and we'll both be available for questions.
Thank you, Diane. Is this on? Perfect. Good evening. My name is Dave Geiser, Managing Director of Merlone Geyer Partners, in-house architect. I've been working with the staff and our applicant team here for the last couple of years on the project, and happy to bring to you our advanced plans since we last met via Zoom. So it's nice to see you in person. Again, our last meeting was last September. We've resubmitted plans since March, but I want to let you know that we have not stopped working with the community and with our applicant team to amend the plans. This is a list of our community outreach that we've had to date. Just by example, we've met with the Responsible Growth Marin 6 different times. We've met with WTAM. We've met with all the stakeholders around the property, different neighborhood groups. We've attended the National Night Out and met again with more stakeholders. We've been present in the community. I'd like to think that through at least my what I have is that we've had good response from the community. I think we've demonstrated that we're here to listen and change the plan when necessary to respond to those comments and where we can. And we continue that outreach today, where this isn't the end. We continue to meet with the community. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. We set up project objectives, which we originally highlighted at our last meeting. And again, our goal here is to create a very successful, integrated, mixed-use town center that not only is a place for jobs, a place for living, place for entertainment, place for shopping, a continued tax base for the city. That continues to be our objectives. Those haven't changed. This was the plan that we had originally submitted that you saw back in September. And again, with this is our phase 1 project without the park or the town center in phase 1, and with the multifamily on the south end of the site. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. There's our phase 2 plan, which included the phase 2 when Macy's and Kohl's do go away. That gave us the opportunity to do potentially housing, and I don't want to add to retail on the ground floor. These are mixed use buildings. This isn't just housing on 5 and 6 or even on 4. There's retail on the ground floor of these buildings. So this is another slide. I just want to we didn't go over this previously, but I think it bears discussing. Macy's, the Cinema, and Kohl's, they have, as a part of their lease, they have control over what happens at the site. In fact, they have areas of control. So you see Macy's there in the green. The Kohl's has the parking lot area control in front of them. They also have control over the second floor of the parking structure, where the Cinema has control of the ground floor of the parking structure. So these, as long as Kohl's and Macy's in the theater here, these are no build areas for us. And so, or these are such that we have to go back and get their approval, which we understand already and talk with them. These are certain non-negotiable items. They have to maintain certain parking ratios. And so it gets the parking, why we can't get rid of all the parking, because they have required minimum parking ratios that they need to deal with. So I just want to point this out as we move forward in the discussion about what we're doing in these plans. So here's our revised plan. And as Diane pointed out, we have a larger park here in phase one. I'll go into some details about that. The other major change here is that in listening to the planning commission, listening to the community, we have, not only for the sake of introducing a different product type, which is for sale townhomes on the south side of the site, it also solved another problem, which there was a strong reaction to having too much density on the south end of the site. So having those 5-story mixed use buildings, even though there was some amount of step down, the feeling was, hey, we've got too much density on the south end of the site up against the single family homes. So going to the townhome product not only got us a different mix of uses, but also then allowed us to step down and have a more compatible use against the south end of the site there. And so the other thing that what that did result in, well, I'll get to that after I talk about the park. So the park, as Diane mentioned, so we've now close to 50,000 square feet. What we're proposing to do is to reuse the portion of the mall that was added to enclose the mall and turn that into an outdoor pavilion. And it was in one of Diane's earlier slides, and we can go back and look at that if you want. And that is on the west end of the park. That acts as the stage, that acts as a covered seating, and to separate and differentiate that from the parking lot to the west. We've got a large center green. We, unlike some other parks where they're more passive in nature, just grass and pathways, we thought because of the nature of this town center, we wanted, and per also the city's standards, we want an activated park. So we have swing chairs, we've got dog parks, we've got kids play areas, we've got fountains here, walk paths, areas to hang out. And so it's a highly activated center. So you feel okay there if there's 10 people in the park or whether there's 200 people in the park. There's plenty of room. Again, it's 50,000, 1.2 acres here in the park. So there's plenty of area. And I've got some comparisons. What we've also done too is add the cycle center up against the theater there. So part of the theater is not only does it get renovated and stay enclosed, we're adding an IMAX theater to this. And that's the box you see there in the lower right-hand corner of the theater. Outside of that, we're building a cycle center, which is bike racks, fixed stations, seating, fire pits, cafes, a place to hang out. And the reason we did that is because and we'll get to that second, you see now the multimodal path that connects to the multimodal path that around the east end of the site. We're dragging that up into the town center, to the cycle center, and over into the neighborhood where the housing is. And so it provides an excellent destination for that path. And so again, the area then between, which Diane mentioned, the street in between, we have raisable bollards. We did this at a project in North Hollywood. We're on busy Friday nights or all day Saturdays or community events. Let's say start of a 5K or whatever it is. We have an art show or whatever. We raise the bollards to close it off to traffic. And so then that allows the cycle center and that active area in the street and the park to work together in 1.6 acres of town center area. And that's flex space. So we can put that down for regular traffic during non-peak times or raise to create even a larger area. So we think that's a great amenity. How does this compare? Healdsburg Town Square Plaza is about 1.2 acres. And there's a very passive park. It's got a small gazebo at one end, walkways through there, fountain in the middle. By comparison, we're about 1.1 acres, about the same size as Healdsburg Town Square. We think that's completely adequate in size for the size of our community that we're doing, the town center, because we're going to build and maintain this park. We think it's also reasonable, budget for us to charge our tenants to maintain this park for the community. So again, this is privately built, open to the public, but maintained by us. So no burden on the city. But again, from a size standpoint, then when we expand we raise the bollards and connect to the cycle center, we're at 1.6 acres. So this is a good, what we get to is people look at the plan on an 11 by 17 page, or they see it on the screen. And in relation to a 45-acre center, this seems like a really small area. But when you actually blow this up and see it in scale in comparison to something else, this is a very generous sized park. And we want it to be active with the neighbors and the people coming there to shop. And that's what we think we've got here is a really fantastic soul, the heart of the project and the community as a whole. Okay, so now I want to talk about a little bit about the makeup here. We started talking about the townhomes. What that does here is that in order to do the townhomes in the reduced number of units, we were looking at, hey, how do we get these units back in order to make the project viable? And so what we looked at is adding those additional units that we've lost to parcels 3 and 4. And so what we have is 4-story the affordable housing, the EAH project in parcel 1, the 3-story townhomes in parcel 2. We go from 2 stories of 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 stories at the back end of parcel 3 on the corner, and then 7 stories on parcel 4. The reason we are congregating the units there was it's twofold. One, there's no neighbors. We're up against the hill of the cemetery over there. So we don't, we're not blocking anybody's views. We're not blocking anybody's sun. It's the best place we thought organizationally on the site to locate that. It's also closest to transit. So in that the city documents are calling for transit-oriented design in an urban setting, having these more units clustered towards not only the transfer station where the bus is over there by the Rite Aid and the Macy's across from Northgate 3, but it's also close to the connection for the SMART train. So it makes sense to us to locate the majority of units, or if there's going to be density on the project, that's where it should be. Right there, has the types, locations. Oh, and I should all point out, townhomes are for sale. So that's the big difference too. So that's the difference in product type: the affordable, the for sale product, and then the multifamily for rental. So this is what the project looks like looking from the south. And so again, organizationally, we see the affordable housing on the left in parcel 1, the lower townhomes in the middle, and then the stepping up of parcel 3, and then the parcel 4 with the height in the middle, and you see the park in the middle. And again, I would say that given that the Macy's is already 5 stories in height, 5+, the difference is not extreme. It's not something that there's already mass on the site. And so we think it's not out of scale, that there's plenty of taller 5- and 6-story buildings surrounding the site, from the office across the street at the corner of Las Colinas and Northgate Drive, to the 6-story office building across the street next to the hotel, to all the taller buildings up on the hill to the west and to the east. Just want to briefly mention, we've talked about EAH housing. We're partnering with them, that we're donating the property. We're excited to have them as a partner. I think Diane's already explained all the benefits that we get from having someone who owns and maintains their own project. They offer so many more services than just having dispersed units on the site, but we are also including those dispersed units in phase 2. So we have a mix. We have the single units owned by EAH in phase 1, but also the dispersed units. I'll also point out that, I should have gone back on the others. On the architecture, we have our residential architect, Studio T Square, is also designing the EAH project. They're going lockstep so that the project quality, from materials to the design, are all consistent with what we're doing with the rest of the residential design. So there's not a inferiority of the design in the affordable housing. So phase 2, I'm almost done, by the way. Phase 2, we were asked to do a phase 2 plan originally. What happens if Macy's goes away? What happens if Kohl's goes away? So we have generated this plan. I will let you know, per the original slide dealing with lease control, they've got long-term leases. As long as they want to keep their lease in place, which we've been told by especially Macy's, they have no desire to go anywhere. They see themselves as long-term partners in the community. At this location, they offer different product mix than what they do down at the Corner Madera, the mall down there. They want to stay. So as long as they're here, this plan doesn't happen, I guess is what I need to say. But we're planning for it. If things change, we're trying to maintain flexibility. And so in this case, we have the mixed units of the affordable into parcels 5 and 6. And there's a second floor just showing, again, I just want to show that there's, again, this is retail on the ground floor and residence up on top. We talked a little bit about areas of control. When we do the ground floor retail, we have the need for parking again. So in other words, this isn't just a park. This isn't just a residential development. This is a mixed use town center. And so we still, in today's day and age of car centric or car demands based for retail tenants, we have to provide the parking. We can't get the tenants if we don't provide the parking. end of story. So that's why we still have some amount of service parking for those tenants. But again, we've got a lot more variety of different tenant choices or shopper choices for different types of tenants. And it's restaurants, it's boutique shopping, it's a different soft good retailers. We're relocating the home goods into the major two. So there'll be plenty of shopping choices for everyone there, including a completely renovated theater. And then, let's talk about the bike real quick. This has been the biggest work in progress. We have met with WTAM, Patrick Seidler, out on the site with Rafat, your public works director, recently to go over our plan. They had some tweaks, some ideas for better connections. We talked a lot about the potential of a multimodal path along the west end of the site that loops around. The problem that we have is that from the parking structure to about the mid parking lot in front of Kohl's, we have a steep drop off, and there's already a guardrail there now. And it's just not possible for us to build that multimodal path there. And that's why we're focused on extending the multimodal path on the east end of the site all the way to the corner of Northgate and Los Ranchitos. And then we're also extend, like we said, you see the path where we're extending up from Marydale up into the town center, through the cycle center and into the neighborhood. Another thing we've done since we last taught, we've taken all the cars off the street in the residential neighborhood. We have no on-street parking through there. Those are all class 2 bike paths. We've heard recently, and part of our discussion was again, gee, maybe we should bring those bike paths up onto the curb. We're happy to discuss that, and we'll continue to discuss those options. We've also been made aware potential for additional class 2 bike lanes to the site. We're open to discuss that too. That continues to be a work in progress. But again, we're committed to making this better. We've met with Marin Transit about the transit center. It got brought up. Hey, we should do a transit center here. They're not interested in having a transit center here. What they would really like to have is better amenities. They want better lighting, better place to sit, more bike racks, more bike lockers. We said, sure, we'll provide that. And then they also want to look at the crossings between the two, and that's down in there in front of Rite Aid, the transfer station there, perhaps a better crosswalk and maybe with flashing lights and the indicators to warn people as they're crossing the street. So we're in talks with them on how to best improve those stations to work for the transit riders. And then lastly, we've been asked for the city for a number of different reasons. We're working with the city now on a development agreement. And part of that development agreement is for us to pay our fair share towards the connection from that multimodal path at Marydale down to the Smart Train Station. That's a negotiation. We have an ongoing discussion. And then, since you brought up, this is a big point that you guys made at the last planning commission hearing. I know it's not something that it was on our list to discuss now, but I just wanted you to know that we're now working with Lisa Marshall over at Sage Green and on our sustainability plan. All the residential is going to be all electric. We're using dual plumbing for all the residential. We're in full compliance with the Build It Green program. And we're also in full compliance with the City of San Rafael Climate Action Plan. All the required elements we're consistent with, and we're working on the recommended. Some we don't meet, but we're working on those requirements now and trying to finalize those, what we can do for the project. Because we have existing buildings and a mix of new buildings, there are some challenges with existing tenants versus new tenants and what we can provide, and that continues to be a work in progress. But since it was a concern of yours, I wanted to let you know that we were continue to work on that with the city. That's what I have. So thank you very much and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you.
So if I could just finish up, and then if commissioners have any questions of either Mr. Geiser or myself, we can take those and you can open it to the public. As I mentioned earlier, no action tonight. It's simply to discuss and receive public comment and give direction to the applicant regarding whether or not you believe he's met your previous direction. One of the letters that we received questioned the public outreach, and I just wanted to confirm with the Planning Commission, there has been tremendous public outreach on this project. A legal notice was placed in the Marin Independent Journal 15 days before tonight's meeting. The city mailed out postcards to all property owners, renters, and business owners within 1,000 feet of the exterior property boundaries of the site. They also mailed out postcards to those people that are on the interested parties list that the city keeps. There are 5 different notices posted on the Northgate site that reference the meeting tonight. There was an article in the Marin Independent Journal in your town section announcing this. And also the city's website has been kept up to date. We have the city should be applauded for their website. The plans are there, all correspondence, notices, everything is there. It's available to the public. I think there's some confusion as Merlone Geyer has their own website, not to be confused with the cities, but we have made all plans public. So with that, if you would please now take discussion and give direction to the applicant regarding the 4 areas we've been over, the town square, the size and the mix of housing types, the location of the affordable housing and the phasing of those units, and the pedestrian and bicycle connections both to the site and within the site. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm sure Mr. Geiser is as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah. And just for the sake of clarification, so I think the order of the agenda is that we will ask questions, the commission will ask questions, then we'll have the public hearing, and then we'll return to the commission for discussion. Great.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So with that, do we have any questions from the commissioners for staff or the applicant? John?
I do have one question, and that's pertaining to process. You mentioned that it'll come back before the Planning Commission, before it comes to us to make a recommendation. Is that right? Is there a schedule for that, or a number of times it will come back to us?
We don't have a schedule at this point, but there's going to be a number of opportunities. The next step for the applicant is to take your comments and make some revisions to their design and request similar input from the design review board. And we don't have a date for that at this point, but sometime early next year. And then, after that, we're in the process of working through an EIR, and that will come to you at some point to receive input from the public. And the entire project will come after that with a recommendation by staff, an evaluation and a recommendation by staff. And at that point, the public will get an opportunity as well to provide feedback on all of the topics that are of concern to them. The Planning Commission will have the ability to provide feedback and input on all of the topics that that are part of the project, and respond to questions and ask questions, and the staff will be able to address anything that comes up during that time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Do any of the other commissioners have any questions?
I had a question. The sort of on the schedule idea, why are we focusing on these now? And I think for the public sentiment, they're probably going to want to know if there is a roadmap, maybe what that looks like. If we're focusing on these now, will these come back again? Or next maybe will be transportation infrastructure? Do we have any idea of that yet?
So the reason this came back now, as you may recall, in September of 2021, we had a study session with the applicant receiving feedback, and they've been in the process of revising their application and working through preparing technical documents, but there's more design work to do. And the applicant really wanted to receive some feedback from the Planning Commission just to get a, yes, we're on the right path, or no, that's not what we wanted. Just something that will help them feel comfortable revising their plans and submitting the additional information to the design review board for input.
So these plan revisions off of the conversation today may impact those other issues that will come back at a later time, right?
The changes will, the comments that they receive tonight will allow them to finalize their documents, their plans, and receive input from the design review board. But all of the other things that have been brought up, things like traffic and water and trying to remember the other things that I recall hearing. All of those, the pedestrian connections, all of those will be brought back, and we'll have an opportunity. The public will have an opportunity to provide input and express concerns, and staff will be better prepared
Sure.
to provide an evaluation of that.
And the site plan will be in a better form where it's more of what's actually going to be built versus maybe what we're looking at today, I imagine.
Exactly.
Okay.
Diane, did you want to?
I just wanted to add, we've received a number of letters and pieces of correspondence, which we've forwarded to you as we've received them. Many of them are regarding issues that we're not discussing tonight, but those will all be kept as part of the project and will be for your consideration when those areas come. So I don't want people that submitted letters, for example, raising issues about traffic or noise or water to feel that we're disregarding that.
Yeah, and that's what I want to do too. That's my last, just making sure I understand it is, if I don't comment, because there's really good letters and I think there's good public input. If I don't comment on that tonight, it's not because that issue is being set aside, it's that issue is not yet ripe for discussion. And when it is ripe, it will be back in a full deliberation that we can all have.
That's correct.
Cool.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Before them, I do want to also mirror what my fellow commissioners have said. I think we have a lot to discuss tonight, and we've all read, at least I can speak for myself, I read all the correspondence come through, and I know it's very thoughtful, and it took time for all of you to write those letters. So, we would like to really focus on these 4 items. I think we probably have enough. I mean, if we went through one item today, we probably would have a full meeting. So my first question is I think it would be for the developer. So I guess I have a question about Macy's. I know a lot of Macy's properties are owned by Macy's and similar to Sears. So is that property actually owned by Macy's, the actual building, or is it like a land lease? Or can you tell us the ownership?
It's a lease. We own the underlying fee to the property, and Macy's leases the building on that property.
Okay. And can you give us the terms, like the dates, how long the lease is for Macy's and for Kohl's?
I don't have the exact date when it terminates. They have options to extend. I know Macy's have options to extend to around 2057. And I believe Macy's has a series of 5 years extensions that would allow them to extend probably around 2035 to 2037. I have to double check that. I don't have those exact figures.
That would
again,
be,
it's those are options that they have to renew.
yeah. And that would be really helpful because I think that plays into the housing question.
Okay.
The other question I had is the parking. Oh, can you describe exactly where the bollards are? Can you pull up the site plan and can we see where the bollards are for the town square?
I'll throw in a related question, actually, since we're talking about that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, like, what is can you describe also the value of the parking that you're trying to preserve near the town square?
Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Actually, you want to go to there you go.
Because there's a lot of parking around that area.
Right.
in addition.
So
Yeah.
let's go back one slide. So first of all, the bollards, the crosswalks the enhanced paving crosswalks that you see between the center of the pavilion over to the entrance to the theater, from that crosswalk where it says raisable bollards and a liner. No, go up to the top where there, yes, that crosswalk, and then the lower crosswalk. Keep going down. Those locations. That's where the raisable bollards are. You see these, they're key operated. You turn the key and you raise the bollards up and they click into place. They prevent car traffic from entering that street. So that whole street there between those two crosswalks, that exactly the east and west ends of the park, actually just continue then the park over to the cycle center, which is immediately adjacent to the other side of that. So when combined, we end up with around 67,000 square feet, or about 1.6 acres of land that can be an event space that's controlled for pedestrians only.
Okay, so if they're on those four corners, how does the parking lot come into play? Because the parking lot has to the plan north has, it's an island between, in the
go-
enhanced
If you go
pathway.
back to the go back now one more. So that's the reason we want to keep that section of roadway open during non-peak hours, so that people could actually circulate around the park. In times of high use, what they would have to do is they would have to cycle back around the theater if they want to
Yeah.
get around, or back out around the Macy's building. There's ways to get around that way, but those are high peak times where people are parking further away anyway, and the parking structure out in front of the Macy's, they're parking further out because there's an event going on. So it's a busier time anyway.
Mhm.
But again, to make it safer for the pedestrians, we thought that it still allows people to cycle around, but on an extended path.
Yeah, and I guess a question related is, I see that there's enhanced paving almost throughout the whole space except for that parking lot. And if we're going to use that for events, like, I guess what's your reasoning behind not enhancing the paving at that parking?
So the enhanced paving, we find that when people are driving on enhanced paving, they'll slow down. It's something special, something different. Oh, I need to slow down here. That's why we do the crosswalks, or all have even the second color of enhanced paving. People will slow down when they get to those points without having to have a stop sign or a raised a crosswalk or something like that. So if everything is enhanced paving, then the specialty of having the roadways becomes kind of it all blends together.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just talking about that one little spot of the parking, because people are going to slow down for a parking lot anyway. They're not going to run through it. Yeah.
That was our thinking.
Okay.
Could we extend that? Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
potentially. Okay.
Now, in terms of why that parking and what's special about that, we have all the shop space now that's focused internally. It doesn't have any exterior exposure. How do you draw people in there in non-peak hours? And what these shop tenants will tell us that I need to have 1 per 1,000 parking, 2 per 1,000 parking somewhere for convenience, so people can come to me at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. They don't have to park over in this structure on the second level and they won't come. And so in order to draw the customers to those shop tenants that have no exterior exposure, they need that convenience parking. Our leasing people are emphatic that I can't lease that unless I have convenience parking in there. And because of the theater will also grab those parking spots, we need to have more. So in busy times, that parking lot will be full. But it is really to provide convenience parking for all the people. The other reason is that people are going to come just to the town center. People aren't going to necessarily come shop. I'm going to go to the dog park. I'm going to take my kids to the park. I'm going to go play in the fountain. I'm going to play in the swing sets. I'm going to take a walk. And people could drive to this area specifically, and they're going to want to park in proximity to the park. So that's why we have the parking. Again, I will go back to, if we thought the park was too small, I'd be the first one to say, hey, let's see if we can move the park and do something else. We think this park is, like we showed you with the demonstration of size, the Healdsburg Park, and even large enduring events. We've got the size of park that we need to house, hundreds of people for events, thousands potentially. And the parking is going to become just critical in that area for those shop tenants.
Yeah, so I have another question related to this whole town park as well. Are you intending to have kiosking in that area?
That's a leasing discussion. If there's a demand for it, that adds to the kind of livelihood and the kind of interaction between if someone's out there selling coffee. We have a coffee cart actually over in front of the
saw
cinema.
that.
So we're
That's
doing
good.
that. If there's an opportunity to do more of that, if there's enough people at events, we have kiosks that people can rent and take out there, or allow people to pull up a food truck. That's one of the events that we actually had discussed. If we ball it off that certain area, we can bring in food trucks into that area,
Yeah.
close that off, and have like a farmer's market, or those at certain events that we can actually have more food vendors and kiosks.
Yeah. And I know, I used to work for a retailer, so I know a lot of these questions. So I negotiated these with people like you, but
So specialty leasing handles.
so I know specialty leasing. So I guess my concern is that it is good to have kiosks. I was actually going to ask there's one coffee stand. I'm guessing there's going to be more demand, but I think what I'm reluctant to see is like a lot of kiosking in that area because you want it to be more of a park than
And
than
we want to
kiosk room.
support the retailers around it. So
Yeah.
the retailers around us will be the special, will be the coffee shop, will be the donut place, will be the florist, will be the newspaper. Those kind of uses will congregate to those kind of areas. So we don't want to have people in a kiosk who don't pay necessarily the rent that these guys are paying, competing with those. I mean, our tenants are going to go crazy, right? If we do something like that. So it'll be event driven specialty leasing is what I'm
Yeah.
guessing that to be.
And if Macy's and Kohl's have their ability to re-up and their leasable area is, those rectangles you provided, when we're renewing leases, you have the ability to, change terms and we can try to figure out I'm not saying reducing parking. I'm saying let's figure out the bike situation. So there is flexibility within the paved areas. If we were to try to recommend helping solve that bike path.
Okay.
Yeah.
Certainly. We're open.
Okay.
And those whole lease discussions, that's not my area of expertise.
I know.
So when I try to tell the leasing people what they need to go to negotiate, they yeah.
Yeah.
It's not,
That's fine.
because the tenants, as you know, typically have their hand out. at that
Yeah.
point.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear about that and that the public and, my fellow commissioners are clear that it's not like a done deal, right? We can try to make
We can try.
concessions to make the project work for you and work for all of us. So those are all the questions I had.
Okay, great. Any more questions?
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a question related to Macy's and Kohl's and their parking. Just given that space, that parking is also going to be used for events, are there any conditions that they've
So if you,
place
can you
or-
go back to the parking area of control? Because the town center sits in the
Slide
former
6.
mall location, that's not in one of their areas, the one above it. There you go.
Yep.
Because the mall is where the town center is today, the white area in the middle, the tenants don't have any control over that area.
Oh, great.
See,
Okay.
so they only have control where you see the colors.
Okay.
So having the town center there, they don't have control over that area.
Great. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, great. I have a couple questions. The first one is around housing. Did you do a demand study to demonstrate that there would be demand for the housing and the housing mix, rentals versus for sale units?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And in fact, the demand study actually got even better when we changed the unit mix. So
Mhm.
instead of having to phase the opening of 3 different multifamily product buildings with the for sale townhomes, which are in high demand, we see the affordable housing, the townhome product, and one of the multifamilies to be built concurrently in the very first phase. And so, because they're absorbed by different users. And so we did do a demand study. There's plenty of demand for the 970, well, the affordable housing, of course, townhomes are without a doubt. And so we're left with about 700 of the multifamily, and there's no problem leasing that. It'll be in phases. The 2 residential buildings won't be built at the same time because we can't absorb that many rental houses at once, but one will get built, it'll get leased, and we'll start the next one and build that.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question, or not a follow-up question, an additional question. Oh, shoot. It just escaped me. Oh.
It's okay.
Okay.
We can
If
come
I
back to you.
think about it,
You
I'll come
probably
back.
will if you stop
Yeah.
thinking about it. So now I have a question about the affordable housing area. So and I apologize, but I think we touched on this last time, but I just want to confirm it will have the same amenities and features and facilities as the rest of the
It
the
will,
housing.
and
Is that right?
Bianca Newman with EH is
Yeah.
here tonight. If you have a very specific question, the short answer is that yes, it will.
Uh-huh.
There are amenity areas, there's outdoor community space for the EH residents. They have the same club rooms, facilities, after school programs. All of those amenities are probably equal to or greater than what are in the multifamily product.
And is it possible to ensure that the quality of the building is going to be the same as the rest?
And that's what I touched on before.
Okay.
So the Studio T Square, our residential architect, is designing both buildings.
Mhm.
And so the quality of materials, same material boards going on. So the same level of materials in terms of the materials being used, and in both the landscape and the building itself will be the same.
Okay. And this is a question for staff related to that. I'm sorry for if you don't know the answer to this, but is there a precedent in the city of San Rafael for a below market rate housing development that is in one building like this? Multi-unit below market rate building?
In terms of quality of design and materials and amenities, everything's required for the affordable units is.
Just in
equally-
terms of precedent, I'd like to think of a building that already exists that's below market rate in San Rafael that
Yes,
we
I
can
can
use as an example.
There's a couple that we recently one that was recently built was the one on Harbor and Mill. That's the supportive housing
Mhm.
building. And one that's under construction now is the Vivalon project that is
Oh, yeah.
on Third
Okay.
Mill.
Okay.
So yes, there is.
Great. Thank you.
And if you want a list of all of the projects that EAH operates in San Rafael and in Marin County, they can provide that to you tonight. Here too.
Mhm. Okay.
Chair Privitali, I remembered my
Oh,
question.
please.
Was the original parking structure built to be able to add level, like with a load? Was it designed to be able to add more levels of parking above?
It was not.
Okay.
And we've looked at that. It would be more cost effective to simply take down the single
Yeah.
structure and build with the current structural codes. You just wouldn't do it.
Got
It's
it.
old enough that you tear it down and start again.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I'm just looking at my notes. Sorry, I keep peppering you with questions. I think this is the last one.
I'm here.
Yeah. Regarding housing again, maybe could you describe why there's so many rental units versus for sale units? Like, is it much more profitable or is it easier to maintain? Like, what's the sort of strategy behind that? Because I think there is, I was going to bring this up later, but and not to go into discussion, but there is this idea that, it would be good to have more smaller units, like one studios or one bedroom for sale as starter homes.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
When we design, and this isn't the first mixed use town center we've designed, we think there needs to be a certain critical mass of residents to make a town center like this successful.
Mhm.
You want to have a number of people that are there on site, creating that energy and excitement, kind of 24-hour people walking dogs, jogging, going to, shopping, enjoying the park. And in single family, if we did all townhomes or single family residents, the number that we can provide would be a fraction of the number of units we can provide here. We're trying to meet the city's housing goals. That's part of it as well. And we just think that that creating more units at close to transit makes planning sense. But again, the retail tenants get excited to share these sites with more customers and residents there on site. And so we just find that having more units makes for a more vibrant town center.
Yeah.
And again, to meeting city goals of housing and whatnot, but providing some less to be able to meet some of the goals of for sale housing and affordable housing. We'll participate to a level.
I guess my question is like, is it why did you not why you're not planning for more like studio units and single bedroom units, one bedroom units to be for sale? Is there a reason why it's more lucrative to rent, or it's just easier to rent them?
So the unit makeup is determined. We commissioned a Concord report
Mhm.
here, which is the group that actually studies the demand study, what people are actually renting,
Yeah.
how many studios, 1s, 2s, 3s you should build. And so that's how we determine what our unit mix is. In terms of townhome design, those are mostly the 2, 3, and 4 bedroom townhomes. That's the what they recommend to build
Yeah.
as being the most successful project. So it's really based on a success criteria of what we think is going to be most successful at that site.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If I may, can I follow up on that just a little bit? I mean, so the design, the 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom, doesn't really have anything to do with whether you rent it or you sell it. Right, there are whole buildings that look like apartments, but they're condos. So you could build these exactly the same way that you're building and sell them as opposed to renting them. No,
Well, yes, you could build condos or you can build for rent housing. That's not our model. That's not what we've
Okay.
performed.
Okay.
In fact, as a we're private, but we're REIT structured. We can't actually build condos. We actually have to sell that product to someone else to build. We can't build them ourselves. It's just condos are a problem. It just in terms of just anyone who lives in them, there's the warranty periods and the OSIP policies and everything you got to deal with. And it's just we prefer to stay out of the condo building market.
Understood. And if I may follow up on your affordable housing question as well. Looking at the renderings that you submitted, the exterior of the affordable housing building looks, I think, qualitatively different from the exterior of the other buildings. The most important point is that what I believe to be the absence of any balconies in any units in the affordable. So to the extent that it is different, I mean, it's not the same. Well, to the extent that it's different, it's not the same as the other.
There are balconies. There are balconies on the second level. In fact, there's a wide balcony that exists there. This is design criteria from EAH and what they would like to see and manage. I think it's a management issue as well. Things tend to get put on balconies that might lower the appearance of the building. But I would defer to EAH and what their design criteria is, because they're the ones working with Studio T Square to actually design the buildings themselves. It's the quality materials that are meant to be the same. The design of that building was originally meant to. We had some Frank Lloyd Wright type design features that we were trying to incorporate with some of the low overhangs and the up above and some of the features that we were doing. And I can get into greater detail on that too, about some of the design features, but it was meant to look different, just like the townhomes were meant to echo the Eichler-esque type design across the street. So was that building meant to look different, as are the multifamily buildings meant to look different. It's a neighborhood of housing, not all meant to be one type of housing. It's supposed to look like a community built over time.
Okay, thanks very much.
Commissioner Samutzi, do you have any comments? Or I'm sorry, any questions before we open it up to the public?
No questions for me at this time.
Okay. Is everyone good to go? All right. Thank you very much. All right. I will now open up to public hearing, public comment. Leslie?
Yes, just so you all know, since it's hybrid and it's new, I just want the people in attendance virtually. We have almost a full house. And for those here, just so we have 110 virtual participants. So, which is great. Yay. But also we will like to keep to the 2 minutes. And if you can focus, you can speak on anything, but we are particularly wishing to gather your comments on the town center, the mixture of housing types, the distribution of the affordable units, as well as the multimodal pathways, the bike paths and pedestrian ways. And with that, if you are here in person, we will start with those of you. If you want to come up to the dais, and you'll each get 2 minutes. And just a reminder for our sound system to lower the mic if you're of different stature. Please come up.
Hello.
Hello, welcome.
My name is Mark Farr and I live in Terra Linda. Thank you to the commission for having this hearing. Thank you to Merlone Greer for showing up and helping to elucidate what is being proposed here. That clarity that I think we're all showing up here to create and discover, I think is only partially represented by these admittedly very nice drawings. I think what would be a quantum leap forward in understanding, especially for the people, would be to have storyboards for the 5, 6, and 7-story buildings that are being proposed. If you stand anywhere in that area and see, I don't know if you can even make a 7-story storyboard to show the outlines and the heights and the widths of these buildings, but if they could do that in the interest of really understanding what's going on here, it would be a good idea. Maybe not for 6 months, maybe not for a month, just for even a long weekend, just to have people be able to walk up to it. They look up there. That's what it's going to be, no more sunshine, no more whatever. That's what we need. That would be a quantum leap forward. All right, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sophie Shihai. I live in Terra Linda. One of my questions is the class 1 bicycle route around the Las Colinas part of the mall plan. The existing is great and I use it frequently, but it becomes problematic around Northgate Drive and the Villa Marin and Golden Hind. What's that? What is it? The street. Well, there's Quail Hill, but there's also the next street. So if you're walking with a buddy and somebody else is coming in the other direction, you have to step out into the street. Whereas the class 1, you can walk around in it. It's much safer and it's much nicer. And I don't know why that's not being included in part of the plans. That's, for me, a big issue. The other thing is I live in Quail Hill, up on the top of the hill. And one of the things is almost every night you hear the squealing of the tires of the cars leaving from the Kohl's second level parking lot. We call the police and they say, we only have 2 officers available for all of Terra Linda, and they're on a higher priority call than that. And it's almost every single night. Okay, that's great. So what are you going to do when you have 1,400 new residences there and there's only 2 police officers there? There's many other issues, but that's thank you. That's my standing out right now. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Feel free to lower the mic.
Definitely height challenged. Good evening. My name's Judith Bloomberg. I've been a resident of San Rafael for over 35 years, and I'm a long-term leader in the Marin Organizing Committee and a member of Congregation Rota Shalom. We desperately need more housing, and the Northgate Mall site is the best site in San Rafael to add this level of density and height. Currently, it's a dying mall. The Northgate project will be a substantial contributor to San Rafael as it seeks to deliver approximately 3,000 housing units in the next RENA cycle. To meet these numbers, we need to support projects like this one. The revised development plan incorporates townhomes in the area closest to the existing single-family neighbors. We support this change, which was made in response to public feedback. As a result, we also feel it is appropriate to increase the height of the apartment buildings to maintain the project's overall unit count. Further, increasing the height and density of these residential buildings benefits the environment. We are pleased that Merlin Geyer is working with EAH, a reputable affordable housing developer, to deliver nearly 100 new affordable units during the initial phase of the project. These units have the potential to house our very low income, moderate income residents, which are the type of units we desperately need. The EAH development will have similar unit sizes and bedrooms as other apartments of this project. The affordable apartments are split between studios, 1 bedroom, 2 and 3 bedroom units. The affordable units built by EAH will be aesthetically within design and have amenities and the appearance of the other apartments.
3 seconds.
as it's related to the
Yeah.
project design, we support.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
It sounds like you're in favor of the project.
I'm in favor of the project. It benefits the goals of building new housing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Sorry to cut you off there.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for taking comments. My name is Susan Coleman. I'm a 20-year resident of Terra Linda, and I'm a member of Responsible Growth in Marin. I'm also a residential real estate professional, so I have a particular sense about what some of this stuff is involving in terms of valuation. I want to thank Merlin Geyer for incorporating some of the feedback they've gotten to date and for their outreach. I am nonetheless concerned about the height of the building, which I guess is residential number 4, which is 7 stories. I think this is a mistake. At 7 stories tall, it's just too massive. It's inconsistent with our suburban community character, and it's going to loom over the sidewalk and the street below, not to mention the pedestrians. Rather than a welcoming entrance, my concern is it's going to feel like a fortress and off-putting. The entrance is an opportunity to draw residents, shoppers, and the community into the development. I'm hopeful a way can be found to reduce the height to 3 or 4 stories and the housing units redistributed along the west and north sides of the property. This is an opportunity to create a model community. It's the largest one going on in Marin County right now, to add housing and to reinvigorate Northgate. I think we can do it in a way that is consistent with Terra Linda's sought after suburban character. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Merlin Geyer. I'm Grace Garrity. I'm a member of Responsible Growth in Marin and a 35-year Terra Linda resident. This 20-plus year complex, I ask that you consider all of the project aspects, large and small, be included in the plans. I know these are temporary or beginning plans, but the plans that are going to be fixed. It's important that construction, project plan, and mitigation plans be coordinated with all the concurrent nearby developments. Right now, we know of loads of, not loads, but we have Los Gamos, 212 units, Northgate Walk, 136, 350 Marydale Road, 45 townhouses, and possibly not yet purchased totally, 245 Nova Albion Way, 87 townhouses. That's just the tip of the iceberg. That's what we know. We don't know what's going to happen in the next 5, 10, 15 years. These developments are all within 1 mile of the Northgate property. It's imperative that the city design a cohesive plan for North San Rafael that includes the impact on infrastructure resources and how to minimize disruption to residents for the next 20, 25 plus years. We want housing, but we have not had a great experience with, for example, Terra Linda High School, a small 2-year project, which the majority of the community totally favored. It was touted as having minimal impact on nearby residents. It turned out to be a huge inconvenience. Neighbors were awakened at 7 a.m., peeping trucks, loud, thunderous noises all day long. Nova Albion was reduced to one lane repeatedly, causing traffic delays. Most astonishing was that the plans left out that Nova Albion would be narrowed permanently to make way for bulb outs. Since implementation, there have been several crashes there. So thank you for listening, and think about how we are going to live in a construction zone for the next 20, 25 years.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having this meeting tonight. My name is Mark Kerner. I live in Terra Linda. I'm on Nova Albion Way. The questions that come up tonight are very good, like what's the mix of the housing? But I almost think we're asking the wrong problem. Like, how do we answer these questions if we're not talking about like what are the anchor stores that are coming in? What facilities for the schools will be provided? Because we already know with this many more new residents, the schools that exist now will be strained at some point. So how can you say if it's the right number of houses or not, unless you're also talking about what's going to attract people to come in, where will that attract a mix of different income levels coming in? So if we're going to have the affordable housing, why aren't we mixing them in with the rest of the residents as well? So we're not isolating folks so much. Which also brings up too, when we talk about affordable housing, are we talking about, is it for artists? Is it for designers? Is it for teachers? And, or additionally, or is it is it a rehab center? I don't know, like affordable housing is just kind
Could
of.
you speak into the microphone a little bit?
Yeah, sorry,
Bring the
affordable
microphone
housing
towards you.
is just a bit of a word that doesn't seem like it covers exactly what it is. So it'd be nice to know what that is as well. But I think there's some just vagueness around what are the stores are going to be there, or is it going to be figured out after the fact? We build that, a bunch of people come in, and then we try to get the leases. And I think that could be problematic. What you want to do is really invigorate the town with, like, San Rafael needs to be a destination now. Here's a spot you can come to, especially Terra Linda. The mall now is not providing that. It's not pulling or serving, the whole community. And this is a great opportunity to do that. But I think it was a great question when you were talking about, is it condos or rental units? Because
5 seconds.
Sure, condos just bring about a different level of ownership that makes you act differently in the community than just all rentals.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Commissioners. Thanks for having this public hearing, study session, I mean. My name is Pam Reeves, and my wife and I have lived in Terra Linda for 24 years. But tonight I'm representing Marin Conservation League. And I can't read my notes. Let's see. I'll put them up. And for those of you who don't know, Marin Conservation League has been here for 88 years. And it has had the goal of prioritizing and protecting the natural world and ecosystems, and simultaneously promoting equity and quality of life in local and regional planning. So tonight, I guess I was surprised that we're being limited to 4 questions, and they're really important questions, but I still didn't hear what a number of you commissioners asked. Will there be study sessions around the other topics that are not a voting session? Because I heard that they were going to be during the EIR. I heard that they were going to be during where people actually vote. So I'm just curious to know what the answer to that question is. And I heard something, the 7-story building. If no one's mentioned that in the staff report, it says that the developer is requesting 12 feet in addition to that as a waiver. So we don't want just 78 feet up story poles. We need 90 feet to show where will the shading be, where will the wind tunnels be. And when Mr. Geiser said that there's already mass that will be on site, he said, so therefore adding more mass is not like adding more mass. I just dumbfounded by that. And my time must be up because I'm done.
Nicely timed. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Waz Hewardine. I'm actually a business owner at Terra Linda, and this pertains, I guess, to the town square. It's a question/comment. I mean, there's a number of already existing community-centric small business owners there at the Northgate Mall location, and they put a lot of time and energy in already sort of attracting a lot of community and doing things upon themselves to sort of bring that sort of feel to the not exactly overutilized mall location. So I guess my question really is there any sort of provision being made to integrate these existing businesses in that sort of area? There's any sort of outreach about that? This could be sort of viewed as a leasing question, but given we're at the planning stage, here's an opportunity to really start to integrate these existing businesses, small businesses that are already community-centric into this overall plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dave Rhodes, and I'm not a member of any group. Other than that, I'm a San Rafael resident, and I'm a homeowner. I do urge you to consider those not in attendance tonight, those like me with young kids who are trying to afford to live here in the next decades. Businesses and governments need more employees, but people can't afford to live here because the housing costs are so high. Many of us don't seek to live in an Eichler with 2 or 3 cars and drive everywhere. And as an example, my family has 1 car, and I rode my e-bike here. It's a way to get around. It's actually pretty great. I didn't have to deal with parking. The site was well suited for walkability transit, and the proposed mix of housing types with the current design that places townhouses nearest the 5 single-family homes nearest the site, with the multifamily units homes nearest Smart and the freeway. I think this all makes sense. And the future of San Rafael is sustainable, walkable, and accessible. A place that I want my friends and my children to be able to afford to live in. I do support the plan to have the EAH manage the affordable component of the housing project. I do encourage you to heed the recommendations of the MCBC, Marin County Bicycle Coalition, on the bike and pedestrian access to the site, within the site, and the connection to Smart. I think they have some really great ideas to keep people safe on bikes and walking through the site. And finally, I do believe that the mix of housing types and the locations on the site do seem appropriate, as well as the size and the heights. It does seem to me that the little parking lot near the town square does seem superfluous. I think of all the wonderful pedestrian retail plazas that do meet the needs of retail tenants. I would really look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bob Pendoli. I'm here speaking for the Marin Environmental Housing Collaborative. We're a group of folks with backgrounds in city planning, housing law, and environmental advocacy.
Could you move the mic towards your mouth a little bit more? Thank you.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Thanks. The biggest threat to California, the Bay Area, Marin County, and San Rafael is twofold. It's climate change, and it's the growing number of people who are burdened by housing costs. As you know, 43% of the households in San Rafael pay more than they can afford for housing. And in fact, 21% are paying more than half of their annual income in housing costs. An important, excuse me, so the solution, what we need is both market rate and affordable housing that's close to jobs and transit that would help to reduce the increase in greenhouse gas emissions and resolve housing inequity. In Marin communities, we just don't have significant amounts of raw land that's available for development. And so for those reasons, we have to look at redevelopment, such as the Northgate project you're considering tonight. But given the shortage of land, we have to focus on density and height. Height is necessary in order to support the density, and the density is needed in order to provide housing opportunity. With that in mind, we think that the proposed density and heights in the Northgate project are appropriate. And finally, some of the best looking housing in Marin County is built by EAH. EAH is the San Rafael organization, grew up here starting 40 years ago. And today, if you view their projects, you're going to be impressed by the quality of the design and the excellence of the service. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ray Lorber. I have been an active member in this Terra Linda community for 30 years. There are quite a few projects I've been involved in, very successful. Lucas Valley Road, sidewalk, power units that we put in 5 years ahead of time to cut out the power shortages. Many others, 50-foot cell phone tower beside my bedroom got removed, things like that. I was picking up about the need for this housing in Terra Linda. We don't need this kind of housing in Terra Linda. We built Jerry Russell Park. We bought the ridge around Terra Linda to have open space. We created this area. We like it the way it is. Tripling the housing in our neighborhood is nothing we're looking forward to. I would prefer we just cancel the whole project. Thank you.
Thanks for your comment.
last time I was here, I spoke, sorry, I'm John Smith. I live in Terra Linda. Last time I was here, it was for the Costco proposal. And I spoke to you all about the beauty of Marin and a lot of what that means to us here. This project it's an abomination and affront to everything that Marin County is about. 7-story buildings, multiple 7-story buildings. Are you kidding me? What's that going to look like? Go down to that area and imagine standing between them for a minute. Look at the hills and imagine not seeing them. Don't see the stars, don't see the moon or the sunlight. You're going to be standing in these giant buildings. Oh, and let's have a nice little park. It's going to be great. Let's draw so many people. Terra Linda supports a population of 8,000 people. That's it. We're going to add 50% to that, pretty much at a whack. Oh, it'll take a few years to build it, but you're really going to do that. You can talk about sustainability and e-bikes and everything. I got an e-bike. Sure, it's great. But you cram that many people into such a small space, you're going to run into problems. Now, I don't represent most of the people here. I'm in the prime of my career. I earn more money than I ever have, and I pay more taxes than I ever have. I own 2 houses in this area. And I can tell you for certain, I don't want my children growing up in an area that's going to turn into what this is going to become. And I can see it plain as day. And if this goes through, I and many others like me will move. And we will take our money and we will take everything else that we have. And what's going to happen then? Then the property values are going to drop. The values of all these apartments that are being built is going to drop. And then where are you going to be? You're going to be right back where you are without all of the resources that we contribute. And Marin County is no longer going to be Marin County. I moved here for a reason and I'll move out.
Thank you for your comment.
My name is Shirley Fisher. I'm a resident of Terra Linda and a member of Responsible Growth in Marin. I ask your thoughtful consideration of the written comments that I've already submitted and address some of these following issues. Equity in housing and quality of amenities for the affordable housing. You need to see the exact design of what the building is, what services they have, where the laundry is, where they have a pool, do the other have the facilities? Are you going to create a second class or ghetto building for low income residents? Provision of on-site personal services, including a full-service supermarket to avoid increased vehicle miles traveled. Provision of General Plan 2040 mandated active open space, including the applicant and the city developing a plan for use of in lieu fees to directly serve the new residents in the surrounding community. For example, if a large number of small rental units are targeted at downsizing seniors, the project needs to include senior recreation and support services. Deletion of the plan to eliminate a portion of the town center open space in phase 2. This is ridiculous. Recreation open spaces need to be increased as new residents are added, not decreased. Inclusion of the North San Rafael Promenade to the Smart Station in the bike and pedestrian plan. I'm astounded that it doesn't show up in this report. The city and Mulongire need to agree on a plan for funding, engineering studies, and construction of this essential connector before the project is approved. Construction of this multimodal path needs to proceed concurrent with housing development in Northgate. I've been waiting for this since 1996. In addition, I want to call your attention to the seriousness of your work in recommending approval of this project. The project spans 20 years. I will likely not be alive when it's completed. It is quite possible that ownership of this property will change hands once or multiple times during this period. It's the city's responsibility to put in place specific project conditions and development requirements that ensure that the project proceeds as promised throughout the 20 years. And lastly, please move the dog park to a more peripheral location and substitute a playground for toddlers and young children, benches for elderly people, and bathrooms and water fountains. These are the amenities that will draw people to the town center and help it be a thriving destination. For example, the toddler playground currently at Northgate is one of the few facilities there that is consistently heavily used.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Vicki Johnson. I live in San Rafael for 38 years, native San Franciscan. I'm up here just to address one situation that we don't seem to talk about, and that is the success of the retail. I'm a retired, retail development consultant, and I know the housing is a big issue, and I will refrain from commenting on that because my whole purpose was don't ignore the retail. Ultimately, in order for this town center to be successful, you have to have the retail work. You have to know what makes retail work. It has to be destination, it has to be impulse. And the plan that's up there right now, as far as wayfinding and the interaction between the retailers and the customers, doesn't work professionally. So that's just an opinion.
Hello, I'm Phil Hallstein. Been a resident here almost 30 years. Raised a couple girls and very proud to be here. Thank you for taking your time, staff and volunteers. The thing we've seen here is how many different stories there are about this development. You know, each of you have a different interpretation, a lot of different stories here. Mr. Geiser and his staff tell a very good story, very seductive, but we really don't know what we're talking about because we can't see it. We're using words to describe a visual, using words to describe an experience, a feeling. So I'm going to recommend that we start asking for a 3D architectural fly-through so that we can actually see what we're talking about and have the same conversation about the same environment here. It doesn't cost that much. The costs have come down. This is a very expensive project. The project is going to be here for a long time. It's going to take a long time to develop it. So I'm going to recommend that both staff and you all start asking for some visual graphics about what this is. Not a bad drawing, pretty boring, hard to tell. It's it's an elevation that has nice pictures on it. And I believe that you guys have done a lot of work. I really want to acknowledge you for the design and the change you've done. So thank you for that. But let's have one narrative, one picture so we can see what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. My name is Laura Silverman. I am an 18-year resident of Terra Linda and also a member of RGM, Responsible Growth in Marin. I actually was preparing a little bit different presentation, but I know I have 2 minutes and I want to focus on the open space and also our town square, the proposed town square. San Rafael's General Plan 2040 requires 4 acres of open space per 1,000 people. The proposed plan provides only about 40% of the required acreage. When we take a look at the current proposal, we're looking at a 1.2 acre town square, a mere postage stamp in light of the 44 acre project and the approximate 3,600 new residents. In addition, this town square is surrounded by parking, and it will be shaded by this behemoth 7-story monstrous building. We would like to see a town square that becomes a civic, social, and recreational go-to site. I must say, I don't know what term to use, but comparing our town square to the town square in Healdsburg, I have great concerns about that comparison. I've lived in Sonoma County. I've been to Healdsburg just a few months ago. I don't know how much Merlin Geyer is familiar with that community, but Healdsburg is maybe 11,000 population. We're looking at a very much larger population here in San Rafael. We don't have Kohl's, we don't have Macy's, we don't have a multiplex in that town square. It's merely just an open space with a band shell and some picnic tables. We're not looking at food trucks and a farmer's market and perhaps a grocery store and all the other amenities that will be needed to really make this town square the heart and a destination, not only for San Rafael, but where you want to invite all Marinites to really enjoy and become part of that community. And so
Thank you. Sorry about that.
thank you so much for your time, and we're looking forward to some really good outcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to switch over to virtual participation. First up is Al Scott. Al, you have 2 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I sent an email to Tricia Stevens, City of San Rafael. I'm hoping that you will get all emails through Tricia Stevens.
We will.
Okay, so you have this email already then, I hope. And I copied and pasted everything from a document on the city's site, detailing all the units and square footage and everything. And the spreadsheet tells me that in square feet, only 8.51% is the affordable share, which is kind of low, considering 10% is like the minimum these days. Usually it's between 10 and 20. So I would suggest that you reevaluate in square feet, the appropriate amount of affordable. The numbers that Diane gave are nowhere near the phase one numbers that are in this document. I know the document's right because they add up to the 907 for phase one. So I don't know what Diane's talking about. So I would suggest that if she's going to talk numbers, she put it on her slide as well. You know, it's easy to talk. Anyway, so next thing is at the meetings prior, I talked about these 5 levels, units or parcels are going to have elevators or not, and if so, is there an allocation for security in these elevators, and is that not going to be a concern? So I don't know if that question's been answered, but it was asked over a year ago by me, and I'm hoping that somewhere I can read about that. I appreciate if that can be put on the website.
5 seconds.
Okay, so I mean, there's 5 levels in all of the units, including parcels 5 and 6.
Thank you.
According to the document. So I'm not sure where the 7 stories come from. Probably 2 units at the bottom is retail, perhaps.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yep. All right.
Next up is Johnson Reynolds.
Yeah, this is Johnson Reynolds. I live in the Canal. I'm a member of a church, Methodist church there. I'm very concerned that we provide housing for people, workforce people, and other working people that drive to Marin and work here, but can't afford to live here. 60% do that continually. That's been for a long time. And we need to provide housing for these people, that are workers, people that are workforce people. I'm very enthused with this project that's going to be happening. The rental units, 7-story, yes, but for density and height is important. And now we're next to the hill. We talked about changing that to the hill side so it wouldn't interfere with sunlight and so on for people, and having the other townhouses lower height towards where the other homes are, and that's very nice. And the amenities are provided for people who will be residing there, as well as for the larger community, is very helpful. So I appreciate this plan, and I put my full support behind it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry. Next up is Gigi Pagani.
Gigi, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm Dr. Gigi Pagani, and I'm a property owner in the Quail Hill condominium complex overlooking Northgate Mall and a 25-year resident of Marin County. I support additional housing in this county, including in my backyard. Just about anything would be an improvement over the status quo. However, I cannot support a project that is grossly out of scale with the residential neighborhood in terms of building height and unit density, despite revisions, still incorporates inadequate trees, green areas, and open recreational spaces, given the proposed population density, aims to ghettoize low-income residents by segregating them into a separate building area. In response to the argument given, there is no reason that social services cannot be provided within an integrated population. That 6 or 7-story buildings, even located near the cemetery, threaten to rob my own and my neighbors' views across to the Frank Lloyd Wright Civic Center in the hills beyond. That is backwards in its layout. Situating the larger scale buildings on the commercial side of the neighborhood would minimize the impact on the single-family homes and townhomes on the other side, homes which currently the designers have one or more of their largest buildings facing. Put those tall buildings next to the tall community buildings that were just cited a minute ago by the developer. That will overburden local schools without contributing their fair share of tax and bond revenues, and that will adversely impact traffic with the addition of likely 3,000 or more residents and their cars moving in and out of the complex daily on top of heavy retail traffic. Thank you for hearing my perspective.
Thank you.
Next up is phone number ending in 0464. And if you've muted yourself, please press *6 to unmute.
Phone number 0464.
I am going to move on to the next person, but if you keep your the next person is Mark Levine.
Hi. Obviously, this is an abhorrent idea, but sadly enough, the planning department seems to always support developers. But let's take Terra Linda and just change its character so some people in Southern California can line their pockets. Of course, everything we heard today that was criticism could be improved if the developer would just take less money. I heard a lot of garbage tonight that could be a great development, that we could, just have that I heard the word urban, but Marin is a suburban county. I heard about there are tall buildings on hills, a town square. I don't know what town they're talking about. For decades, Marin was somewhat in harmony with its nature. We made.
Oops, I am so sorry. Let me get Mark Levine back. Mark.
Mr. Levine, please hold on. You still have a minute left.
Yeah. Mark, if you would be so kind as to re-raise your hand, I can locate you among the masses. Apologies, Mark, I cannot locate you. We'll move on to Jenny Silva, and Mark, if you re-raise, oh, there you are. I'm so sorry. I say we give Mark 2 more. Can we give?
Okay, we're gonna, restart
I'm
Mark.
so
Give
sorry.
another 2 minutes. Sorry, Mark.
Okay, so what I was saying is that for decades, Marin somewhat built harmoniously with nature. We maintained our open space. We had Frank Lloyd Wright. We had Eichler. Now everything that's being planned is as congregate. Lots of it 4, 5, 6, 7 stories high. We were told that it had to be 7 stories to be viable. I think that's nonsense. We're told that we need this housing locally, but let's remember it's going to be market rate. People who can't afford to live here now will not be able to afford to live in this Northgate project. It's not going to be any different. And half of it will be occupied by those moving in from elsewhere. What's the next step with this centralized planning coming from the state? Will they be tearing down single family houses to build congregate housing? During the last election, what I didn't hear much from candidates was about local control in housing. I think we need legislation making housing locally controlled and not coming from the state with flawed assessment programs. I think we need legislators who support legislation with more local control over housing. And I hope that Damon Connolly and Michael McGuire are hearing this. I think that the idea of having an urbanized Marin County is something that I just cannot totally support. And I just can't support the idea that we're going to change the character of our county so people in Southern California can now become wealthy. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Jordan Grimes.
Yes, good evening, staff and commissioners. My name is Jordan Grimes. I'm here tonight representing Greenbelt Alliance. We are an environmental nonprofit focused on helping ensure the sustainability and climate resiliency of communities across the Bay Area through public policy. And we just wanted to share our strong support of the Northgate Mall redevelopment project. Northgate really is an ideal project from a sustainability standpoint, and the transformation of the existing land use is perfectly done. The era of the suburban mall is over, and reimagining these places as small mixed-use villages where people can shop and work and live all in one place are the perfect successors to them. A few things we really like about Northgate, the commitment to EV charging, to battery storage and solar, as well as the creation of new bike and pedestrian infrastructure. The best way to reduce traffic is simply to get people out of their cars as many and as often as possible. And we believe the design of Northgate does that really well. And then on the housing component specifically, we support the creation of as many units as possible. We support the 7 stories, and we'd certainly support the 1,400 unit option if possible. We're particularly excited by the low income affordable units provided by EAH. And just to zoom out for a minute, Marin's severe housing shortage isn't just a housing issue, but a climate issue as well. 60% of Marin's workforce commutes in from outside the county, mostly from Alameda and Contra Costa, largely due to high housing costs. That is driving huge increases in greenhouse gas emissions, and allowing people to live near where they work is critical to meeting our climate goals. That is exactly what this project will do. So we're very pleased to support it and hope you will as well, although obviously not tonight because this is just a study session. But thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is Susan W.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. I would like some, what I haven't seen is I would like a little bit more information about the users and the uses. Some of the other speakers touched on this. So the demographics of who would be living in these buildings, what would most of them be working, and would they be commuting, or it's a difficult question now in that it seems the pandemic has changed some of behaviors, but that's important when you're constructing and when you're selling these units. I would be interested in knowing what price range these units are, what you're looking at. And as far as uses go, there are businesses right now, such as Pete's Coffee, and then there's a skating rink and some other. I would be interested in knowing who will be staying, who would be leaving. And also we have weather, we have winter time, we have summertime. And how would the design support when it's raining? If it seems that we're having a lot more storms and it's getting colder, how do you envision the users, the retail users shopping? How would they be encouraged to come with some of the changes in the design? I also support maybe looking at using the north side or the west side for housing. I'm still a little unclear as to how some of those decisions were being made. And the use of buses. the use of transit. If we speak about
Susan.
sustainability,
Thank you very much.
transit. I'm not hearing much from speakers, but transit is a very important aspect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Jenny.
The height of this project, Marin residents want to support open space. We have continued to add more open space to our 85% open space, and we want to support the environment. And the only way we can meet both of those goals is to build higher. Infill dense housing is far better for the environment than building greenfield developments further out. It uses less electricity, less water, and reduces the need for driving, as several other commenters have mentioned. In addition, the issue of paying for infrastructure has come up, and infill development like this is much more cost effective to support. I'd also like to say 7 stories is not out of keeping with Marin. It is not out of character. This is not a skyscraper. This isn't even a particularly tall apartment building. The buildings aren't substantially higher than the other buildings in the development already, and they are shorter than the hills that surround the development. The 7 stories are by the cemetery. I don't think the shadows are going to be bothering anyone. Even if this was groundbreaking height, which it's not, it is time for Marin to embrace it. We have an enormous housing shortage. We have a desire to maintain our open space. We need to go up. For the comments on density, I want to point out this is not a particularly high density development overall. We're not quite at 30 units per acre. There are many developments throughout Marin that have over 100 units per acre. The height allows the town square and the retail. Anyway, thank you. And I urge you to consider the comments on parking from Marin Bike Coalition also.
Thank you.
Next up is Margaret Johnston.
Hi, Margaret Johnston. I'm a 34-year resident of Terra Linda and co-chair of the Galenas Watershed Council. I'm speaking for the Galenas Watershed Council this evening. And for those who aren't familiar with the watershed, it comprises Terra Linda, Los Ranchitos, and Santa Venetia. And so the mall is essentially in the center of the watershed, and therefore anything that happens at the mall will impact the watershed. And one comment is we're not clear from the drawings that we've seen that there's sufficient green space to provide for adequate stormwater infiltration on the site. We would be concerned that there be no stormwater runoff from the site that would then flow into the into Galenas Creek. But secondly, we're not commenting on the housing. We're relying on responsible growth in Marin to provide those comments. But it was mentioned earlier that the promenade plan needs to be addressed as this moves forward and the other housing developments that are being proposed move forward. And the promenade plan is more than simply putting in more concrete and asphalt for bike paths and sidewalks. It's to provide a well-landscaped, pleasant walkway that is attractive and is well-landscaped. And I'm not seeing how that is being supported by this development. So I would like to see how these developments are going to have a positive impact on the rest of the community through implementing both the promenade plan and the city's policy of restoring Galenas Creek through Terra Linda. So I would hope those things can be incorporated into this. Otherwise, generally, obviously, it's a good place for housing, and we're not in objection to housing development on the site.
Great. Thank you.
Next up is Jeff Bialik.
Jeff.
Oh,
Jeff
hi,
Bialik.
is this me?
Yep.
Oh, hi, I'm Jeff Bialik. I'm a 27-year resident of San Rafael Park. And I just want to, and I'm also with the Marin Organizing Committee, as well as Housing Crisis Action Marin. And I'm very much in favor of this particular project and this development. I think Merlin Geyer has done an excellent job of responding to the earlier comments from over a year ago with regard to the size and location of the open space and amenities, the mixing of the housing types with the addition of the for sale townhomes, and also the location and phasing of affordable units, as well as the pedestrian and bicycle access. With regard to the location of the affordable units, I think it really makes sense to have EAH build a standalone affordable housing project or development on this location. And also to remember that even though it's considered an affordable housing project, there will be a wide variety of mix of incomes represented in that particular project. So it's not all isolating together only very low income or moderate income. It's going to be a mixture of incomes. And I think that makes sense, especially with regard to how you finance and manage these kind of projects. So I really want to encourage this project to continue to go forward, to rely on Merlin Geyer, their expertise with regard to the mix of how this project will come together with regard to retail and residential. And just to recognize that we're building this project for the future and not necessarily for ourselves. And I want to thank you for the time. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Next up is Mark.
Mark? Do we have a last name?
No.
Mark, are you out there? All right, let's skip Mark.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
No worries.
This is Mark Zemmelman. I'm a property owner in southern San Rafael. I'm the co-author of a recent book with a number of national experts called Extending Justice, Strategies to Increase Inclusion and Reduce Bias. Actually just came out a week ago. I had planned just to listen tonight, not to comment, but I was very troubled by two statements of the applicant. First, the concept of packing low-income people into one area and the well-off into another area is just another form of discrimination. Since Brown versus Board of Education has been well established that separate but equal is not equal. If you really want to assist low-income people, you mix people of different income levels together. The argument that this will help provide social services to put all of the low-income people in one place is totally wrong. You get better social services when you mix people and you provide social services to the entire population on a sliding scale. The idea of justifying discrimination because it leads to more financing needs to be investigated. How much extra financing will be obtained? Is the developer able to pay this? Does it justify the well-established psychological impact of segregation? The second misleading statement by the applicant is the comparison to Helzberg Square, which I happen to be familiar with. Helzberg Square is surrounded by maybe a few hundred residents, not thousands. If you had thousands of people living around the square, it would be entirely inadequate. If the point here is to create the same feeling as Helzberg Square, then the open space in this development needs to be multiple times larger. Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Next up is Bill Carney.
Good evening, Bill Carney. I'm speaking for Sustainable San Rafael. We very much support this development, a great evolution of a mall into a mixed-use development of the sort we need this century. The first comment I want to make is about the town square itself. We just ask that it be allowed to evolve, particularly if there is a second phase to the project, and to look at evolving towards expanding it to the parking lot to the west, not just the one to the south, but the one to the west, which is really the one that erodes that central space. Secondly, relative to bikes and pedestrians, our comment is to make pedestrians primary in any further involvement of bikes into the site. Think bikes are a great idea, but keep pedestrians having equal dimension of right of way. And certainly add the Marydale Promenade. So on housing, our critical concern here would be any further loss of affordable housing. We should draw a line if there's any further reduction in unit count overall, the affordable unit count should remain the same or grow. And in terms of ownership, we would ask whether there is any opportunity for affordable ownership within the ownership portion of the project, or are we building a ladder that has no lower rungs? You know, if we don't have smaller affordable ownership units, people are not given that way to build up equity. And I would look at shifting towards the northwest corner of the site, now taken up by a few car-oriented restaurants, in order to provide additional housing that might result in reducing height, although that's not our primary concern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is Philip Nittenberg.
Philip?
If you can unmute yourself if you're there, Philip.
Philip Nittenberg? Okay.
We will go to the next.
Moving on.
Next is Craig Tackaberry.
Hello, Craig Tackaberry. Thank you for the meeting tonight. I appreciate the focus. The last meetings were, I think, too broad. This project is way too complex, and having just 4 items tonight, I think, really helps the conversation. Regarding the town square, the staff recommendation in the report says that they support the 50,000 square feet. They don't really give any basis. The applicant mentioned that's about the size of Healdsburg, and I concur with earlier commenters. Healdsburg has very low intense uses surrounding it. It's a population of 11,000 people. I don't think it's really applicable. Sonoma Square, I just use Google Maps. It looks like it's about over 300,000 square feet. So I'd ask the commission direct staff to do more research and find a town square size that's going to work for everybody and provide the revitalization we're looking for. The current Oak Tree Plaza next to Kohl's is about 30,000 square feet. I think everybody would agree that that plaza really isn't what we're looking for. And one of the most important things is its connection to adjacent uses. The Kohl's Plaza just turns its back on all the uses turn its back on the plaza. There's no activity at all. And regarding height, I've heard a lot of comments, and I think it's really hard for the people to understand pedestrian scale, what size these buildings are going to look like. Story poles and 3D visuals would help. And I really don't understand why the applicant is so reluctant to put buildings on the north side of the site that has been brought up before. I think those buildings on the south end could be reduced by a few stories if you'd put buildings where they now have, I guess, looks like a fast food restaurant. And regarding the pathways, the most important connection of the pathway is where it leaves the site on both ends and goes to the adjacent streets, particularly for the cyclist that's going counterflow, and that's not really addressed.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
If there's anyone else virtually that would like to speak, please use the raise the hand icon. Oh. And the next speaker is Tyler Nielsen.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. Hi, my name is Tyler Nielsen, and I'm a student at Terralinda High School. Terralinda is a suburban area, not downtown San Francisco. Northgate has also been a mall, and it is our only mall in North San Rafael. Reducing it by this much is mad. The mall needs to be redesigned to draw people in. That is the issue it has now. Look at downtown Petaluma. It's not a massive downtown city, but every night it's active and it has business big and small throughout. Why? As the Phoenix, parks within, restaurants all around, thrift shops, clothing shops, bars, a huge movie theater, and more. San Rafael has a movie theater and a few large stores at Northgate. Put in a music venue, a permanent ice rink, a roller rink. The ice rink in the winter draws business to the area, not just the rink, but put in an arcade. The BPAC should be involved in the study sessions. Speaking of which, when will they be? Storyboards should be 100% done. TL needs to be involved. Teacher housing should be provided here to integrate our teachers into our community. Northgate is fueled by students, and they should be asked what would make them want to go there more. Many do, despite the dying mall, whether to hang out, get food, go to movies, etc. Don't take that away. Your downtown square is puny and there should be more than one park. Separate the park and an event area. Have bigger event space and a protected bus stop area should be added. Density is too much. Like many say, it ruins the hills and it sticks out of it. It is too tall. 7 stories is too much. Make it 3, maybe 4 at most. I support I support more housing, but not turning Terra Linda into San Francisco. Marin is known for being not a tall city. It's known for its hills and suburbanness. You put low-income housing in a corner and make it look different. Really? Now we know you're classist, I guess. But take the same design, put it together. Don't make it look different. That's wrong. The same materials as a start, though, I guess. More housing is needed. Can we handle 15,000 more? I don't think the schools can. 1,000 is even a bit much, but at least more reasonable. Climate change is coming danger. Outdoors is great, but I hope the outdoor part at least has some part with overhangs. From your plant, I see you slowly plan to destroy.
Thank you.
Tyler.
Next up is, again, the phone number ending in 0464. And to unmute, please press *6.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for having me. My name is Josh Townsend, and I'm speaking on behalf of the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce, which represents over 500 Marin County businesses and 26,000 employees. And I'm speaking in support of the development project tonight in Northgate. The proposed project offers a significant contribution to the city's housing allotment, and it's really situated in an ideal location. As you know, the Chamber of Commerce has been a strong advocate to bring more workforce housing to San Rafael, and the Northgate site is ideal. It's the right site to add density and height to produce workforce and market rate housing that we desperately need. We're also pleased.
I'm sorry, could you please repeat that last point?
Oh, I'm sorry. And the Northgate site is ideal by adding density and height to produce more workforce and market rate housing. We are really pleased that Mullingar is working with EAH. They're a great developer based here in San Rafael, and they would add those 100 units in the initial phase, which is a really, really big deal for the chamber. The plan is also responsive to the community feedback that they received on the first workshop, and we think that the trade-off for taller height towards the interior of the site that the public mentioned before is a great trade-off that they've made and they've taken into account. We really feel that this project has the potential to bring substantial community benefit to San Rafael, and the chamber supports the 4 items moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
If there's any further people wishing to speak, please use the raise the hand icon at the bottom of the screen, or if you're phoning in *9. Anyone else in the chambers? One more, sorry. Victoria Holdridge.
Hi there, Victoria Holdridge. I'm associated with MOC and UU Marin. I am in favor of this project to add affordable housing, and the mall is dying as it is. And we need to improve it. We need to add lots and lots to the community. And I have lived in this community for 34 years. So I'm in favor of the project. Thank you, and keep going.
Great, thank you.
I'll give it a few more seconds. And that looks like the end of public comment.
Okay, great. I will close the public hearing. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions by the commissioners before we turn it over to sharing our thoughts and comments?
One question is for our discussion section, could we just put the 4 questions up on the screen to just refer to?
Sure. Is that feasible? Great. Okay. Yeah, I guess I have a couple questions I'll just throw out there just based on the comments. So how is the security going to work with the elevators? Are people going to have like key access into elevator lobby?
That's correct.
Yeah.
The main access to the units via pedestrian is through the lobby, which is a car keyed and a locked, and each of the different buildings will have their own security. As you enter via car, there'll be a gate there that you'll have a car key to open, whether that's a roll-up gate or a flip arm. It hasn't been determined. When they get to their floor and park and they walk in, again, key card entrance into the building. There are elevators that again are key card activated, just like with a regular house key or apartment key.
Okay,
they'll have. So
that sounds good. And just another question. I'm going to try to keep my questions within the 4 topics. So there are no below market rate units that are going to be for sale. Those are all. That's correct. Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Okay, those are my only 2 follow-up questions. Does anyone else have any questions before we begin discussion?
I just had one follow-up question. In regards to the 3, I think there are some great recommendations made on more visuals and storyboards, and was just curious if that's been considered in the past.
Yes. What we didn't include tonight in our presentation were all of the visual renderings of the project that we have of every building from almost every angle. That was for design review and future discussions. So we kept our presentation short by taking those out, but we have those. If you'll notice in one of our renderings, we have a 3D view from the south of the site that was built in SketchUp, which is a tool that we use to build 3D models. From that 3D model, and as we get all the plans finalized, we'll be converting that 3D model into a fly-through of the project. We've committed to doing that with staff. We are going to do that. What we'd like to do is wait till the project settles in terms of where things are going to be, and it's easier to change in SketchUp than it is once you render a full 3D video. So we've committed to doing that. And we do have full renderings of, very realistic, photorealistic renderings of all the buildings that we'll be bringing up at a later point.
Right.
And we have been sharing those with staff, by the way. They've seen all these renderings.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Where are we on parking count? I know in the packet that we have from March, we have future parking count and we have percentage, but we don't have like a table, or I couldn't find a table saying required versus provided.
That is in our original submittal package. There's a
Okay.
whole information sheet behind the site plans that has a breakdown of all of the residential parcels and the parking ratios. They average about, for residential, about 1.75 parking spaces per unit. And again, that's an average, and some are more, some are less. On the parking for the retail in phase 1, we're down around 3.75 per thousand ratio. If we move into phase 2, it's a little skewed because the Macy's is so big, it's 250,000 square feet, so it eats up 1,000 stalls. And so when we get rid of that, we actually end up over parked in phase 2, and we're at like 5 or 6 per thousand the ratio.
Yeah, I think we need to see that, or I'll say that for my comment, but I think we need
Okay.
to see that.
Yes, but it's again, phase 2 is really phase 2A and 2B. If the Macy's goes away, it's 2A. If Kohl's goes away, it's 2B, and if they both go away, it's 2C. So it's a graduated scale of parking.
Okay. Any more questions?
I had on the townhomes, I don't know much about them. Is there going to be like an HOA, or what's the ownership of a townhome like?
Yeah, yes. There will be an HOA that governs the standards of the design and what colors you can paint your mailbox, I'm sure, and all that kind of stuff. Well, yes, and that'll be set up by the developer of that parcel.
Got it. And do the units have rights to the I guess the first one, the town square? Is there some sort of right associated with it, or how does that work?
So there will be a common area, or excuse me, a reciprocal easement agreement and access agreement that allow the residents of all of the residential parcels access to the other parcels via car and pedestrian access as well. So yes, that'll be, and that REA has yet to be completed.
Okay. Okay. All right, great. Thank you. All right. So now I think what we'll do is we'll just go in a round robin around among the Planning Commission for comments from each commissioner. So we'll start with Commissioner Haveman.
And I wonder if we want to go through each commissioner addressing all four at once, or go through item one and then go around.
I would say all four at once. I mean, what do you guys think?
That's fair.
Okay.
Okay. So let me start with comments on number one, which is the size of the town square, I believe. I find the discussion about the size of the the town square to be and the parking next to it to be heavily discounting the fact that there will be 3,000 people living within walking distance of the town square. As such, I mean, it's very, very different from Healdsburg. It's very different from most other town squares to which it might be compared. And that suggests that it deserves perhaps more space than it's been given. And my preference would be that it eat up the parking that you indicated was important for the retail there. But I think it's more important for the retail there if there aren't 3,000 people living within walking distance. I think that makes a difference. And so my view on the town square is that it probably is inadequate. Let's see, going on to number two, the mix of housing. I'm reasonably comfortable with the mix of for sale and for rent. I understand your issue with condos. It's a little disappointing that there's no affordable housing for purchase. Purchasing housing is a pathway to asset accumulation and sustainable residency in Marin. So I'm a little disappointed that there's no for purchase affordable housing. I also want to mention that affordable housing in Marin doesn't mean that the occupants will be low income, right? I believe I've got it right here that the cutoff, this is a below market rate ownership program income cut limits. For a family of four in Marin, it's $146,000, right? So these will be not low income housing. I worry about the 7-story building. I drove around, not very environmentally conscious of me, but I drove around Northgate Mall about 4 or 5 times this afternoon, kind of trying to envision what it was all going to look like. And driving down Los Ranchitos with all of the very tall trees on the left and envisioning 7-story apartment building on the right, it felt to me like it was going to be very much a tunnel. So what I would like is that the applicant at least consider a step back on the 7-story. I realize that might come at the expense of some apartments, or maybe it comes at the expense of some parking. It strikes me that for the future, there is a lot of parking allocated for the residences. 1.7 per strikes me as a high number, as e-bikes and as other with the smart train nearby, with lots of shopping nearby. It strikes me as perhaps excessive. I do also want to take this opportunity to just mention the enormous externalities that are associated with putting 3,000 people and 1,400 units in this area. And by externalities, I mean the costs imposed on others. I spend a fair amount of time up in TL, and I'm often getting onto 101 right there at about 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it backs up already. And if you put 3,000 more people in there, it's going to back up much more significantly. And the alternative of driving down Los Ranchitos to get to downtown San Rafael, that's going to be gone. It's going to be a long trek down there.
The traffic study is going to be another topic.
Yeah.
For another
No,
Yeah.
the externalities
It's
generally, there's a
very
traffic
important,
issue,
yeah.
there's the water issue, there's the school issue. Want to raise that issue here, but
Yeah.
yes, I understand. I'll save traffic for later.
People
Okay.
driving around by themselves multiple times.
Well, I could do that now. You can't do that. Fair enough. Fair enough.
Are you a Lyft driver? No.
No. So let's see. Number 3, I'm going to hold off for now. Number 4, bike and pedestrian access. When I looked at this is going to come off as very rude. When I looked at the plans, the first time it came through, I thought it was sort of 1960s design. And when I look at it a second time through, it looks like maybe late 1970s and early 1980s with regard to pedestrian and bicycle access. I appreciate the class 1 that now runs in from the east side. But there's the only way to access it by bike from the south, the west, and the north is to ride around to the east side and come in. If you're coming in from say up towards Safeway, the only way to come into the town center by bicycle is to ride through the parking lot. And you know, I might be interested in riding down to the town square with my 5-year-old son or daughter on their bicycle, and then it's completely untenable given the access that's currently available. I'm surprised that some of the new roadway, if we're starting from scratch, I don't understand why the bike path is in the road and why it's not combined and multi-use with the sidewalk. I think that would benefit both the bikers and the pedestrians. Right, 5 feet wide sidewalk, that's not very much space. And so my overwhelming thought about this as being a town center is that it needs to be accessible. And I think it's probably very accessible for people who live there, but accessibility for people who live in the surrounding communities. Granted, when you get off the property, you've got bike and pedestrian issues, but on the property, we have an opportunity to make this a very accessible space for people walking, for people on bicycle. And I don't see that this does that. A couple of suggestions. Where we are very car centric, right? And so all of our sidewalks go down to meet the road. Well, suppose the road went up to meet the sidewalk. That would do a number of things. That would make it easier for pedestrians, especially those who are mobility challenged. And it would slow down the traffic, just make the neighborhood safer. I'm not going to go on too long with many of these suggestions because I figure some of my colleagues will bring them up, and if they don't, I'll bring them up at a later opportunity. I'm disappointed with the amount of pedestrian and bicycle access with the current plans, and I'll leave it there.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Mercado.
Great points. I agree. Totally agree with everything. I'll take it point by point as well. I mean, I'll be more blunt. I think the town square needs to be bigger. I think that by calling it a town square, it's not a park, in my opinion. I've worked on projects where there's sort of these town square plaza central areas. And I agree, there's a lot of units, there's a lot of folks, there's a lot of people on site. But what I heard tonight was that it was going to be intended for the broader community. So I think looking at that, the first area that jumped out at me was reconfiguring the parking. Can you make that? I think this project is looking at current parking, maybe not where the needs will be. So I would be much more flexible on playing with that to expand the square, giving just a good recognition. I think there's some comments about the use of the square a bit. I think one of my fellow commissioners raised it as well, some of the community members. What's that going to look like? That kind of came up, it kind of didn't. I understand, so probably a little bit down the line, but there's some business owner concerns. That's something that's going to need to be addressed, whether there's a policy, a program, a recognition, it's up to you guys. But I think that's something that's going to be it's going to come to light. This has been very much focused on the housing, but I think there's a business component that I didn't really pick up on much. And I think the town square has a component of that. I would tie that in together a little bit more. I felt like that was missing quite a bit tonight. So again, bigger, maybe play with the dimensions, look at reduction of parking. I understand sort of the Tuesday 11 o'clock parking needs, but I think there's a way to be a little bit more creative. Again, this project is, as indicated by the amount of folks, we're 20 times what our normal audience crowd is. There's a lot of interest. So I think people will want to see that we really try to play with that to maximize the space. The mix of housing types, again, I agree. I think looking at the townhomes and what can be done there was missed. Whether it's just doesn't pencil out, whether there's an affordable shared appreciation, later option, working with another affordable, again, I think it just needs to be discussed. If it's something on the table, that'd be great. If it's not, at least it's been looked into. I know why you have to make one building to be affordable housing. That's going to maximize the units. And I'm glad you're looking into that. Probably not for tonight, but at some point in one of these discussions, we really need to look at that site itself. There's going to be a lot of community concern. Who are these folks? What are the services? So I think that's going to transfer over to EAH. And I think a good just presentation about that will be really helpful. I'm sure it's in the queue. And I think it's going to be a little bit not just of the site and the building, but also how it's incorporated into the community. Great point on what these residents will be. Who are they? Would it not so much that, but I think it's really more of what's this building going to look like? How's it going to incorporate? That may help appease some of the community concerns about what is this going to be. It's also going to probably play into the height of these buildings, not on point for discussion tonight, but all of this is, again, hopefully going to share that story as to how you're maximizing the site use for building these and how it's required. Again, we're looking at housing here. So if you can show how the utilization is, why that's the best option, that will maybe make us feel a little bit more comfortable for, okay, this is why it has to be that dimension. The location and phasing, again, I'm fine with that. I think there needs to be a little bit, maybe more incorporation, like I said, on the townhomes, or at least a discussion about that. And then the pedestrian and bike connection, I think you acknowledged it. I think access, such a good point. This is a high density on-site project, but it needs to be integrated. I mean, there's a town square, it's not a community square. So how do you have those access points come in? I'm not a bike and pedestrian person. I don't really get it. I would have driven around as if I had the time today. No shame in my game about that. But there seems to be a missing access point. And whether that can be done or not, I think it needs to at least be explored, in particular for other parts of the community that don't have that easy access down through the one entry point. I think my main takeaways, I wanted to acknowledge staff. This is huge. Congrats on retirement. Good time to leave. And just, this is a big project, and I appreciate all the work that's been done. I mean, there's a lot going on. I really like this breaking of it down. I think this makes it much more palpable for the community. It makes it a lot easier for us, and just sort of hopefully providing good feedback for everybody. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Samutzi.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I do want to acknowledge staff on this as well as the applicant. This has been several years in the making, and I know that there are a lot of people that have a lot of opinions. It's not possible to please everybody on this. So I know that it's a very challenging balance to make, especially when you also have the obligation to make this profitable. Otherwise, you won't be able to raise financing to actually execute this. So to the 4 discussion points, the first one being the size and location of the town square, open space, and the amenities. I don't have a particularly strong opinion about this. I think that the comments from both Commissioners Haveman and Mercado make a lot of sense to me. I don't have anything in particular to add on to what they've said there. In terms of the mix of housing types, and this probably also plays into the densing and the massing and the size. I think one thing that I heard consistently in the public comment was about, I heard 1, neighborhood character, and 2, I heard suburban character. For me, those feel a little dog whistly in terms of like what that really means, especially in the context of having high density in a particular neighborhood. I think one thing to consider, this is just sort of broadly for the community at large to consider, because there are a lot of complaints also about Sacramento taking away a lot of local control. I think one thing to consider is that, the bigger picture is that Sacramento is under an extreme amount of pressure across the state around housing affordability and the creation of more housing. So the more that communities provide resistance to the creation of housing, the more that communities make it expensive for developers to actually move projects through the pipeline, the more that the state is going to take away control from local communities. That's just the reality of how this is going to work. So I think it behooves all of us to kind of move away from the mindset of like treating this as like a cafeteria menu, that a developer should be, sort of soliciting everybody's feedback, and like you treat it as a sort of a mix and match of like what you told the developers to do. Like at the end of the day, like there's a financial component. Like if this doesn't pencil, this doesn't get built, and you're stuck with a dying mall and like nothing else changes, right? And if you talk about valuations of the area, like a dying mall here is going to harm your valuations. Like if that's really what you're concerned about, which is kind of reading between the lines of what I'm hearing that a lot of people really care about. I think the other thing to consider also is that 83% of the land in Marin County is dedicated to open space, which means only 17% of the land is actually developable. Now we have a housing crisis, which means that, we can't have our cake and eat it too, right? We can't address the housing crisis and still preserve and keep land, 83% of it only for open space, without doing something, right? And that means that we probably have to do more density with the land that is available. Like that's just the reality of where we are. And again, given the context and our hands are tied by the state, and they're going to be increasingly tied by the state, it behooves us to be acknowledge reality about sort of about what is realistic and what is feasible in terms of these kinds of projects. I think the other thing to consider is that, if we're taking a perspective of environmental sustainability, there is no form of sort of urban planning that is less environmentally friendly than suburban sprawl. Considering that, consolidating housing and increasing density in specific areas would actually be more environmentally friendly, and when it comes to providing infrastructure to service particular communities. So I think those are, again, I'm just sort of laying out sort of the macro facts for everybody in the community, like just to be perfectly transparent and blunt about like what we're looking at here. So when we think about like the mix of housing types, we have limited options realistically about, what the developer can actually do here and what they can actually do and make pencil. And I think to that end, they incorporated a lot of the feedback that we'd already provided in previous sessions, particularly around providing housing for sale as well as for rent, so that there is that bit of mix. I think, it's fair to ask about whether there's affordable or below market rate housing for sale. I imagine that as a product, that probably is not profitable to build, to sell. And that's why it's not there. Because again, this is not a nonprofit. This is a for-profit entity. And this is their, private land that they own. And that they're within their rights to attempt to develop. So I think, within those constraints, I think the mix of housing, I think they've been very responsive to the community feedback to date, balancing as much of the different points of view as they can within a sort of financially feasible set of guardrails. So again, I commend them for doing that, because it's not an easy thing to do. In terms of the location and phasing of affordable units, I heard a number of comments also about ghettoification and this complaint of, isolating, quote unquote, lower income families in specific areas. And again, I laugh about that, because I think like the very nature of Marin's historical development has been about segregation and about like putting certain people, like sticking them within certain areas and leaving the rest of the space for everybody else. I think this project, more than anything else, would actually provide a bit more mixture than we actually have in most of our neighborhoods across Marin County. Being in one segment of a, what is this, a 50-acre plot, right? That's more admixture than most neighborhoods in San Rafael, or in particular in Terra Linda, have. So, this idea that, having below market units in one particular spot within the property is in some form creating some sort of ghetto. I think it's sort of like, I don't know, it's a little bit insulting, I think, to like what to how redlined Marin County is today. and to how sort of ghettofied Marin County is based on, persistent decisions against providing, higher density within sort of mixed in within the rest of the quote unquote low density suburban neighborhoods. So I think, to the extent that that has been planned right now within this proposed plan right here, in terms of the location and phasing of affordable units, I think again, there's you have limited options in terms of how you can actually intersperse them. I mean, you could perhaps make some changes. I will defer to the design committee about the actual design of the massing of the buildings and things like that. I can speak to from a policy perspective and whether it aligns with the general plan. And I think that to the extent that they can and make it financially feasible, I think that they are right now. I think lastly, in terms of the pedestrian and bicycle connections, I think this is one area where I do think I do concur with some of the previous comments that were made around the accessibility of these bicycle connections and pedestrian connections. I would encourage the applicant to think about the natural points of egress. I think in particular with where public transit is and how easy and accessible it is from a pedestrian or from a bicycle standpoint from all points of the property and all points of the plan in terms of being able to access those kinds of common points. I think there still could be some things accounted for. I don't know how much wiggle room you realistically do have, but I think that's certainly something that can be considered to the benefit of the project if we're looking specifically at a pedestrian and bicycle perspective. So those are all my comments.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Schock.
Thank you. I think quite a lot has already been said that I was going to touch on, so I'll keep it short. For the town square, I do think it would be really helpful to share some examples of comparable town squares in size and density. That seemed to be a question that came up quite a bit from the community. In regards to the parking, I am curious as to if we really need this amount of parking with the transit nearby, and so would love to just better understand that. And then there was some great recommendations, I think, made in regards to the parking itself and how it could be made more aesthetically pleasing. So defer to the design committee there, but I'm just curious as to what your plans are there. For housing types, I too am curious as to if there can be some smaller units to own. And then on bike lanes, I also agree it needs to be more accessible. The class 2 paint only bike lanes seem to be a big issue. So if that could be reassessed, as well as the west side of bicycle accommodations, I think more and more residents, especially as we look into the future, will be using bikes. So making that more accessible would be fantastic. And then I know that this is for future study sessions, and I'm pretty new here, so I wasn't around for this last for the last study session, but there does seem to be a lot of vagueness around what is going to really be pulling people to the town center, how to accommodate and integrate for the existing businesses and the people in the community, schools, as well as all of the, how do they get their grocery? Just it's quite a lot of people, and so I just really look forward to future study sessions on these topics. I know, sorry, that's not for comment today, but I look forward to diving in more there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, Vice Chair Sade.
Okay, thank you. I think there's been a lot of great things said since I'm second to last. I really want to, thank my fellow commissioners. They've provided a lot of good insight and comment. I'll start going down one by one. So size and location of town center square or town square open space. I agree, it's inadequate. There is an option that parking that is existing within the area and the ring road. There is parking on the perimeter for those, lower demand hours. I also think there is the ability to restripe the existing parking and also like find additional spaces for that parking within the site. I don't want to, I think in any other meeting, we'll hear, about parking all day long. So I don't want to really mitigate the need for that. But I do see there's quite a bit of parking for the residences and for the retail. And I agree that with this many people on the site, there and the people that are be coming in, I know I go to Terra Linda several times a week. My mom lives there. My sister and her kids live there. We would ride our bikes there. So I think you're going to get a lot of young families who have recently relocated to Terra Linda that are going to be there on a regular basis on top of the residents that you have. And I'd like to see that area have amenities similar to what is there now. We do have a lawn in that town square, but it'd be great to still have the ability to have a ice rink in the winter, to have open space for, if we have a concert going on at the same time, there's a farmer's market, like just think about ways to really capitalize on the successes that are already at the center right now. In regards to the mix of housing types, I think Commissioner Samutzi pretty much said what I was going to say, but much more eloquently and probably more detailed. I agree. I know it's a financial, you've got to get the right numbers to work and the performer to work. You know who the demographic's going to be. You've already ran that already. And I think it's helpful. I think the community be more perceptive if the narrative was told in a way that we could all understand. I think right now we do have a housing crisis in Marin, like we've all, everyone has mentioned. I understand longtime residents of Terra Linda really enjoy the existing fabric. And I think all of us here that live in Marin do as well. And we want to see Terra Linda and San Rafael continue to be viable. I've seen, I'm going to try to say this. There's been some disappointing comments, I think regarding just like what type of people are going to be here. Are we going to create another canal? It is upon us to create equity in Marin and equity in San Rafael. And, charity starts at home. I'm not saying it's charity, but we need to fix our problems here and not point to other places. I agree with Commissioner Samutzi about the segregation. At first, I was not really up for having the affordable housing be in its own area. And then as I read the report and continued to think about it, it does make sense that we have that and be in one location. It makes sense for the developer. If we can get these units here, we should do everything we can to get them. Okay, location and phasing of affordable. Oh, I think I pretty much said that, talked about that. One thing I will say, and I think that's been problematic throughout this whole comment period and review, is that the latest drawings are at the very bottom of the webpage. And it's apparent that nobody, I'm not going to say nobody, very few people have been able to see all there's thousands of pages of renderings, plans, landscape plans, civil plans. They're on the webpage, but at the very top where it says applicant, it says applicants. I think there's a link right under the applicant's name, applicant's project page, and that is probably where most people go. And that is the applicant's path, which doesn't have the plans and everything. It'd be helpful if you were to put some of that stuff on there, because I think that would really help the community. But I also think it would help our community if we can get the links to the most current plans. Let's get them up higher so we can all see them. And then I will defer to my fellow commissioners, as well as the Marin County Bike Coalition, for the comments regarding pedestrian and bike access. There's a lot of room for improvement. And I think in terms of how we execute it, there's always a way to amend a lease agreement. There's always a way to work with the tenants. There is. There's always a way to work with the existing tenants to get what you need to do to get it done. And I think, I mean, we don't want to make it harder on you. And what I'll say as a community is this site has to continue to deteriorate because our community has, like, we have said no to so many plans here. And if we can't make this work, like, this whole site is going to be in ruin, and nobody's going to want to try to invest in it, because it takes years to get this stuff done in a normal period. We got to work to make this part of San Rafael viable and enlivened, and really a place for the new generation of, like, the young people. Like, I'm not super young, but I have a young family. And my mom lives here. My sister, my sister just moved here with her kids. Like, there's a lot of people here who have the income and who desire the Marin lifestyle, but also desire the amenities that are going to be allowable here. We just need to make it accessible and really make those amenities what they need to be. So that's all I got.
Great, thank you. All right, well, I'm the last one, and I don't know about you, but I'm freezing. So
Yeah.
is everyone else really as cold as I am?
Yes.
Okay, so just taking each one of these in numerical order. Size and location of the town square open space, I agree. I'd like to see it larger. I think that adding parking around the perimeter would be sufficient. So yeah, a larger town square. Also, with regard to the town square, I'd like to see, like, a larger opening from the south if possible, and in order to make it more inviting, and so people can actually see from Las Galinas and Ranchitos, the town square a little bit more easily, and be able to go in there. And I think that would probably help the businesses in there be more successful if people can actually see it from outside the development and want to go in there. With regard to the mix of housing types, yeah, I mean, I was really happy to hear that you guys did a demand study and that it's consistent with the housing, that mix is consistent with the demand study. Personally, I am in favor of distributing the affordable housing throughout the development. I'm of sort of like a mixed mind about that, because I understand the benefits of having EAH, giving that site over to EAH, but I know that there's that really the modern way of, and I mentioned this last time, of developing affordable housing is to mix it with regular market rate housing. And if potentially you could solve some of the other issues that the community are talking about, like the height, like the maybe putting more units in that area where the affordable housing building is, then maybe that would be a good way to solve the problem. With regard to the location, and I actually hit really number 2 and 3 just now. I'll also just say I'd love to see, if possible, more housing on the western side. I know that you guys have lots of parking restrictions there, like, and whatnot, but if you can fit a little bit more housing along Northgate Drive, I think that would also be very helpful. With regard to pedestrian and bicycle connections, I agree with all the previous speakers. I think it's looking good to me. I am an avid bicyclist. I bike almost every single day. So yeah, and I bike through the Northgate to the site really on a regular basis. And yeah, and I understand there are hills on the north side that make it hard to get out that way. But yeah, I agree with the other comments on the bike paths. So that's pretty much all I got for you.
I have one additional.
Oh, go ahead. One more comment.
I have one more comment that I forgot to add about the housing. I did look at the plans and when we hear 7-story building, it does sound pretty aggressive, but if you are able to access the drawings and find the renderings, I think you guys did a good job of stepping the 7 stories. And I just don't think I think it's a nice way of integrating it. It's not a block like the other buildings. And I just appreciate the design there.
Realize that was on. I'd like to say 2 things. One is to thank Commissioner Sumuzzi for his comments. Very important and very well said. So thank you for that. And the other, I had intended to start off my comments by commending the applicant on the changes that you made since last time. I think the townhouses are a terrific compromise. Really good. The setback in the 6-story building at Los Ranchitos and Northgate, I think that works really well now. And I think the library, putting the library is terrific. And I do appreciate the increased attention that you gave to bicycle access, despite my previous comments. So thank you, both applicant and staff.
Yeah. And actually, speaking of the library, I did see in one of the public comments from Responsible Growth in Marin that they suggested putting the library at that entrance down at where I think it's Meridale comes in. That's kind of an interesting, it might be an interesting idea to make it a more welcoming entrance into the town square. So yeah, okay, great. Any more comments from the commissioners? Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for all your time. Thanks to staff. Thanks to Merlin Geyer. Now we will move on to the director's report. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was fun. That was great.
I think this is the longest meeting we've ever had. Is that
You should
true?
hang out in Berkeley sometime.
For me? Yeah.
All right. I have a few reminders that I brought up last time, but honestly, I do think all your comments were wonderful. So I loved hearing them. So again, both Aldersley and the draft housing element are going to City Council on Monday, December 5th. Yes, it is going to be December. And a reminder as well that on the 19th, the city's master fee schedule will be heard at City Council. We do not have any meetings scheduled for December. And I'm a little sad that Commissioner Harris was not able to join us today because it would have been her last meeting, but I guess last meeting was her last meeting. So we'll miss her. There is a new recruitment out for planning commissioner. We are going to start implementing the recruitment by the different regions. I can't think of what it's called. So districts. Thank you. So it will be District 1. So if you know anyone that you think would be a well-qualified candidate, and by well-qualified, I just mean interested in the community and willing to participate, that would be awesome. Please have them apply. What else? So our next meeting will be January 10th, and I'll send you reminders about that. And there will be probably a light meeting where we do the, meetings for the year and elect a new chair and vice chair. So yay. And I just want to make sure that did you all receive the invitation for the boards and commissioners, which is at Paul Kirk on December 14th. So I would love to see you all there in person. So if you are available, if you have childcare, probably you can bring your children, right? I don't know. I would like to see your children. So yeah.
I think it's
so
past their bedtime.
What's that?
I think it's past their bedtime.
5:30.
I think you need to bring your baby.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The baby for sure.
He'll sleep, right?
And that is all I have.
Okay, great.
Not
any-
quite all though.
Any other communications?
Yes. So
Go ahead.
at the last planning commission meeting, I was unprepared to talk about my attendance of the previous
Oh, yes.
DRB meeting. So I prepared this time, even without Leslie reminding me. I'm very proud of that. So the meeting was on December 8th. The only item on the agenda was a new residence at 380 Margarita Drive, a new single family house. Margarita Drive, this is halfway up the hill, sort of behind Dominican and a little bit east. I struggled to place it geographically, but it was a request for an environmental and design review permit for a new single family residence pool, detached garage with a guest unit on a vacant hillside lot. The place is terrific. Once it's built, I would love to live there. But there were a lot of concerns expressed. One major issue was water for fire suppression, as there going to have to be some sort of a tank or a pump up there. The windows, there's a big wall of windows, and the concern was expressed that you're going to be able to see that for miles if there's a light on inside. And what to do about that. Colorful walls, the rendering was all white, so it sort of stood out. And then there are some big retaining walls. There's a 17-foot wall that retains a swimming pool, and concern over just how that's going to look. And those are most of the issues that were raised, and it's going to go back to DRB before it comes to us.
Great. Thank you very much. Any more comments? Okay, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
And everybody.
Good night.